David, how you doing, buddy? Don't hear you. No, nothing yet. You gotta connect your audio there. There you are. Are you there? No. Connecting audio is half the battle here. No, but here, you can always call. Let me give my number.
Mike, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, Ivar, you sound great. We might have to help David with
I
it.
can hear you now.
David, nice to see you, buddy.
Hey, it's my pleasure. I'm just trying to figure out, I've got to turn the volume up here.
Sure.
Uh,
I'm unworthy of this this crowd I'm zooming with tonight.
I'm sorry?
I'm unworthy of this audience.
Oh, no, you are very worthy, Mr.
Oh.
1000 Edition.
Oh, save that praise for the recording. Okay, that's good.
Okay.
Hey, Scott, how you doing?
You hear me? Hello.
Yeah, but could you get louder?
Hi, David. Am I not loud enough? Yeah, I don't have a proper mic set up to this thing. Hang on.
What the hell?
Hey.
Hey, look at that. Hi,
David,
hi,
oh
Mike.
my God, your hair, go back. Your hair is so fabulous.
Look at David. Oh my God, that's awesome.
Leslie, it kind of looks like yours is a different color.
Are you copying? We have the same shirt on? Like,
I know.
I'm jealous. Like, I thought I had long hair. Look at you two.
Well, it's
it gives us, oh my God, yeah.
So I've never met.
I tell you what,
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
When Mike reached out and said this was going to happen, I thought, oh shit, I've got to have the same hair that I had when we started CFNY. So I grew it just for this night.
Hilarious.
Let me say hi though, because I've never met Leslie. Hello, how you doing?
I'm excellent. Nice to meet you too. This is just like so fabulous. I can't even stand it.
And Ivar's on this right now, but he's not turning on his camera for a little bit. He's going to remain mysterious before he puts on his camera. But here's Robbie J. Hello, Robbie J.
How are you all peoples? Fine
Hey,
peoples.
Rob.
Scotty.
Hi, Rob.
Hey, David.
How are you?
I'm well, you?
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Excellent. I never worked with Miss Kross or with Liz. I never worked with
No,
you.
we never did. I think I was in Vancouver when you came along.
Yeah, I was I arrived at the 89, end of 89.
I left in I don't know, but I think I left in 88. So, but I really don't know. So Leslie, that's an interesting couch or bunch of chairs you have behind you there with furry cushions.
Of course it is. This is my home office, don't you know?
Oh, is it?
Yes.
This is my home studio.
I know. It looks very familiar to me, as a matter of fact.
Yes,
Do you know what I have, David? I have a
Wow.
box in my storage area. And I think I have the notes that you wrote, your speech for the CN Tower pitch to the CRTC.
Oh, really?
I think I have your handwritten notes. I have a bunch of stuff like that. I've got to get it out.
I don't even know if I want to see that.
Oh yeah, you do. You do.
I remember the basis of it. I really do remember the basis of it. I guess we should save this.
I was going to say, save the gold. Let me just say hello to Jay Brody. Brody, you represent the entire current iteration of 102.1. So thank you for being here, buddy.
Thank you for having me, Mike. Thank you for having me, guys.
And you lost a shit ton of weight, right? You look great.
Yeah, I think I took off about 80 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crap.
Good for you,
Hey,
Jay.
Freddie, it's the battle of the long hair, Fred. Look at David's winning, and then maybe Leslie,
Yeah.
and then David.
David,
Hey, Fred, how are you?
not bad. Is that your hair or is that a wig? Is that your hair?
No, it's really my hair.
Jesus
Yeah.
Christ. Really?
Holy, that looks fucking
Wait,
great.
hang on. Hang on.
David looks younger than all the rest of you. Like
He's
he
gonna
looked.
put a wig on for sure. You know that's coming.
But
No, it's real.
Okay. Hey,
Freddie,
Mike, while I-
Yeah.
Freddie,
Mike,
Yeah.
when are we getting your manifesto?
What's my manifesto?
Well, you've got the look of someone who's living out in the middle of
Oh.
in the woods there, my friend.
No, I know, eh?
a quickie question, Mike.
I've only had 2 haircuts since the beginning. Well, since COVID started.
All right, who has a question for me?
Fred,
Oh, yeah,
Fred,
really
I
quick.
haven't had.
What's the approximate date that this will air?
Where?
You know, it's hard to predict because it's going to be episode
For sure,
1021.
Marsden.
I think we got a couple of weeks.
Okay, so roughly later in the month. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
tomorrow I'm at 112 and 113 tomorrow. Go ahead, Alan.
David, I want you back on camera for a second. Mary Ellen wants to see your hair.
Oh, you want me to back?
Yeah. Jesus. Oh, God. Jesus Christ, man. Look at this. Look at that fucking hair.
Isn't that awesome?
You know, Fred said he hasn't had his. He's only had 2 haircuts in 2 years. I haven't had any haircuts in 2
No, it
years.
looks like it. It's great.
Hey, Alan, if your wife wants to join this, she's more than welcome.
No. She does not do those things.
I
These
tried.
things.
I tried.
I know. Good try.
I'm just trying to figure out how Jay lost weight during a pandemic when the rest of us put it on. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that.
I can tell you what started it, since we're talking about hair, is during the pandemic, I got a hair tattoo. So if you see that the hairline here, that's tattoo.
Ah,
Oh,
Right.
So
Wow.
once I saw myself with a hairline, I was like, you know what? You don't look like such a piece of shit. And I started getting in shape.
just
That's
to
what
make you
started it off.
feel better, just to make you feel better, you're not putting on weight. COVID causes clothing to shrink.
oh,
Yeah.
okay. That's I'll go with that.
That's all there is to it.
So I'll wait a couple more minutes just for a couple of late stragglers. We might have some people who join us in progress. I think Maie Pauts is going to try to join us in progress. And even Howard Glassman says he's going to try to pop on later. But again, I'm here to herd the cats. So I'll kind of moderate. But I mean, we're all friends. We're all basically, if you have a story that's relevant to where we're at in the CFNY story, be it like because you were there or because you were a listener or whatever it is, and I'm going to check my text because somebody's texting me. Maybe that's about this. But you just chime right in. We'll try not to talk over each other, but we're going to just capture as much gold as we can over the next couple hours. I'm so glad you guys are here. Oh, I got it. Bob Willette wants to join us. I'm just going to send this to Bob. Stand by here.
He and I were out for some beverages last night. We walked to the local.
Well, Fred, should I let Bob in? You think he's allowed in this thing? What do you think?
Why not?
I'm just goofing. Of course. All right.
Bob, he's a good boy.
Bob Willette link.
Where's Ivar? Why can't I see Ivar?
He told me. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, Ivar sent me a note that he's
Oh,
going
there he
to,
is.
He's
Okay,
eating.
that full disclosure.
What's that you're eating?
It is, I've got some broccoli.
I just had some problem. By the way, hi, Leslie Kross in the middle there. You haven't said anything, and I haven't seen you in so long.
It's so nice to see you.
It's nice to see.
You know, it's just like it was yesterday, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yes. It's funny. We've had David on our show, the podcast now, and we've had Ivar on and Alan, and we should have Leslie Kross on as well.
Yeah, you should.
Rob Johnston's been on. Jesus Christ. Scott, you've been on as well? Yes.
Yeah, I was. I did a little on your anniversary show. I
Yeah.
sent a little audio. I think there was a time before I was supposed to be on, but I had something else. I
Listen,
couldn't-
I've been trying to get Scott Turner. He's hard to get, okay? Difficult man to book.
No.
Scott, did we have you on? I can't remember.
I don't think so. I think we were
Oh.
about to, but I had to. There's something else that came up. But
Oh,
I
yeah,
did-
something
I
more
did-
important.
I recorded something for your anniversary, though.
Right. Okay.
Oh, you
That's
probably
what
had
I'm
that
thinking of.
annoying, heart problem or something like that that got in the way.
Yes, there was that.
Oh, and look at that. One of my all-time favorites, Phil Evans. There he is, ready to come on. That
Phil's
sweet
in?
man. Oh,
that's
where are you?
So sweet.
Phil, show your face, buddy.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Oh, how many fucking times have you done this?
Well, hold on.
Okay, while Phil
start-
figures that out,
Yeah, no, I know how to do it.
You work for Tillis. You would think that you would know.
I do.
occasions.
Cannot start video.
He's
Failed to
reached his
start
data
the-
limit. He's reached his data limit.
Wait a minute. I'm gonna jump out and come back. Okay.
okay, sure, Phil. Okay.
Oh my God.
All I need from everybody here before I start recording is what year you arrive at CFNY. So your first year. We're going to do this rapid fire. So, David, what year? 1970 what?
78 or I think 78, but I'm really not sure. But I'm going to say 78.
You know, I was talking to Lee Eckley the other day, and Lee tells me you replaced him at 102.1.
I did.
That's what he, yeah. Yeah, that's right. He tells me,
Oh, really? See, I did not know that.
small world. Yeah,
Are you being
really.
serious?
I'm being serious. Scott, what year did you arrive at 102.1?
84.
Leslie, what year did you arrive?
82 as an intern in the newsroom and 83 full-time with David.
What year did you arrive, Robbie J?
October 1989, and the first person I did any interning with was Alan Kross, and I'm still working with him. God knows how many years later.
Yeah, look at that. That's cool.
Oh, what a crew we got here. Freddie P, what year did you start at CFNY?
August 79.
Hey.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm glad Freddie's here. He was a tough guy to book too. Okay. Alan, what year did you arrive?
October 3rd, 1986.
Hey. We're all gonna make Jay feel bad when he says 2019. Jay, what year?
2020 was our first year at the Edge.
Dude, I'm glad you're here, buddy. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's not all about the spirit, right, David? We had the station continues. Okay, Ivar, what year did you arrive?
That's why I'm here.
September 77 as an intern, first turn. February 78, intern, second time round. March 79, full-time employee. And left in 88, November 29th, 88.
So you only predate me as a full-time employee by a few months. I thought you were there for a couple of years. Well, I guess you were as an intern. Before.
I was like the, guys in High Fidelity. I just showed up and never left.
Uh-huh.
Look
I
at
wonder
this.
how that happened.
Bob, what year did you arrive?
Hi, Liz.
Bob Willette.
97.
Bob, 97?
97.
I know. That sounds recent, doesn't it? But it's not.
It's 25 years ago.
That was 3 weeks ago.
I know. It sounds like it.
Okay, we got what a lovely turnout here. I can't believe this is going to be awesome. Liz, what year did you arrive at CFNY?
Liz, where's Liz?
Where's Liz? Planet Dove?
I don't see Liz. I love Liz. Where is she?
Planet Dove. That's
Planet Dove.
Oh, there
I
she
think I got
is.
there in
There you are. Hi, Liz.
Oh,
Yeah.
Hi, Liz Janik.
oh my God.
Hi
What a
there.
crew. What a crew. What year did you say, Liz? Or you cut out for a moment?
77. I think is when I started writing the classical music show for the station.
Mm.
Okay.
Wow.
And Dani, what year did you arrive at CFNY?
89.
Hi, Dani.
Hi. Hello.
Okay, we're going to get into this because there's a lot of ground to cover and there's a lot of great voices I want to capture here. So just remember, just be polite when someone's talking and they finish. You can come in. I want to hear as many stories as I can. And we're going to cover as much ground as we can. So we're going to start with, we'll start with Marsden and we'll end with Jay Brody and we'll kind of create some magic. Is everybody psyched?
Okay, yeah. Should we raise our hand? Seriously.
Did you want to leave the room?
If something you want to say something, because you're right. You don't want everybody talking over each
I
other.
agree.
Okay, I mean, I will do my best to, maybe if I see your hand up and then I'll be like Freddie. Like I'll kind of try to be like.
My problem is I wave my hands all around just naturally.
But if I miss you and you feel there's a moment to chime in, don't be shy.
Okay. Okay.
We're all,
Okay, Mike. Okay, Toronto, Mike.
We're all good friends here. And there are a few people who will join in progress, and I'm going to keep that sound effect on because I when I'm listening, I like the fact that when I hear a little ding, like, oh, somebody else has joined. Like, it just seems kind of exciting to me as a listener to hear that. So, okay. Here we go, everybody. Episode 1021. Thank you all for joining me on this Zoom. I'm overwhelmed by the turnout, and I thought we'd just begin before we jump into the history of CFNY from the beginning to the current day. Maybe we just one by one, I'll shout you out, and you can just say hello so we know who's here on this 1021st episode of Toronto Mic'd. So I'm actually going to go in order of like Zoom panels. So this is no particular order except the order you arrived, I suppose. But in my top left, I'll just say hello. And as I speak, people will be joining. I see Maie Pauts just entered. But let's start with David Marsden. Thanks for joining us, David.
And what? Sorry, I got lost in your verbiage there. Am I just to say my name or
Yeah, you can just say hello to everybody, and then we'll know you're here.
Hi, everybody. How you doing? Wow, it's great to see you.
You look great, David. Scot Turner.
Thank you,
Scott Turner, hi, everybody. Look, just the same.
Thanks.
Not far off.
Scott, for those listening, he showed us a picture of himself, I guess, back in the 80s, and he looks pretty much the same here. Leslie Kross, who has never been on the program, but I'm just delighted to meet you, Leslie. Say hello to everybody.
Hello, I'm Leslie. I was David's assistant from 83 through 88, and I know where all the bodies are buried.
By the end of this conversation, we're going to know as well, hopefully. Robbie J. Say hello to us, Robbie J.
How is everyone doing? I think this is amazing because there's a lot of people on this call. About a third of the people here I actually never worked with. I never worked with Liz or David or Leslie, but everybody else at some point, or Ivar actually as well, except for the rec days, but everybody else at some point in time I've crossed paths with. So this is great.
Well, thanks for being here, buddy. Thank you to everybody for being here. But Fred Patterson, Freddie P, how you doing?
Fred Patterson, sportscaster, class of 79.
Freddie's the one guy. I feel like I've talked to Freddie already today because, we touch base regularly. But good to see you on this Zoom, Fred.
No, glad to be here. And again, looking at all these sweet faces, nothing but fabulous memories of, my life, my times at CFNY. There's a story in every one of those faces. Amazing. Love it.
Or two, or three.
Or three. You're right there.
We're going to see how many we can collect over the next 2 hours. If Captain Phil ever figures out his camera, but that's another story.
I don't know. I'm attaching other cameras and none of them work.
Okay. Well, I know you're there, so I'll remember to shout you out, but I won't see your hand raising. But Alan Kross, I'll see your hand raising. Thanks for being here, Alan.
Yes. Hello. Hi, Mike. Again, we've been doing this quite a bit, haven't we?
You're a good FOTM, Alan.
Okay.
That's a compliment. Ivar Hamilton.
By the way, wait, I'm not done. I've worked with everybody here except Jay.
Hey, Alan. I never got a chance to meet you once we started, COVID started and we got separated.
Yes, we did.
No, yeah.
Maybe at a future TMLX, I'll get to introduce you guys.
I love that.
Ivar
Alan,
Hamilton.
where's your mic?
Who's Mike?
Where's Alan's microphone?
Alan, where's your mic? Let us know.
No, I'm in. My wife is watching TV on the main floor. It's Mary Ellen Benninger, by the way. Yes, it's true. She's watching her stupid real estate shows. That's next door to my studio. My studio isn't completely soundproof, so you would be listening to the Property Brothers in the background if I was doing this. When I'm down in my office using the Mac.
Gotcha.
There you go. Inquiry minds want to know. But Ivar Hamilton, how you doing, buddy?
Very good. Original import show, CFNY Video Roadshow, currently nythespirit.com. I've worked with most of you, if not at the radio station. Worked with you, Dani, in business, and Robbie J. I highly anticipate every time that we talk about doing business together as well. And Fred, missed you while you were on holidays the last couple of weeks. I'm glad that you and Howard are back.
Well, thank you, Ivar, and good to see you. Ivar
and I have this thing where every time we see in a record label's script, highly anticipated new release from, we want to go and throttle the copywriters because it's the most overused, overextended phrase ever in the history of media.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
And it's funny, Ivar, you came to the station originally 77. We became friends in 79 and really haven't touched base for the past 40 some odd years. We haven't. Or, I mean, we haven't
lost touch.
We haven't lost touch is what I'm saying in the past 40 years. Yeah, that's what I meant to say.
Okay, because that changes everything. But glad you're here, Ivar. Glad you're here. And Bingo Bob Willette, thanks for joining us, Bob.
Thank you very much. Yes, Bingo Bob Willette, one of the few people, actually the only person from the Humble and Fred intern program, the very successful one, and also known as RQEQ technical guy, the producer of Martin Streak's live to airs for close to 3 years as well.
Well, Bob, we have
very, very soft hands.
Soft hands. In addition to our soft hands, I have something in common with Bob in that at some point you were producer of Humble and Fred, and today I'm proudly producing the program. So
I am the last producer of the terrestrial radio show that are exclusively terrestrial radio show known as the Humble and Fred Show.
Well, good for you. We're going to hear more about that through this conversation.
I buried them.
Yeah, what'll that get you?
What a legacy. Liz Janik, so glad to have you on the program. At some point, you're going to get your own episode of Toronto Mic'd, I promise. But say hello to everybody.
Hi, Liz.
Hi, Liz. Hello, everybody. Nice to be here with you all. See your faces, especially the gang.
Everyone but me and Jay.
Leslie's internet is herky-jerky.
Hope I'm not frozen. You look all frozen now.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to work around that, but everybody else seems pretty stable. But Liz, we'll work around that. But Dani Elwell, let's hope her internet is okay. How you doing, Dani?
I think it's okay. Is it okay?
Sounds great.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm okay, except I'm inspired by everybody else's backgrounds, and I feel like I'm lacking a little bit. But I'm always marveled at Ivar's. I love all of your stuff.
Oh, thank you. Well,
you have good stuff.
Thank you very much. It's my house is bursting at the seams.
Why don't you just put it all on an iPod, for Christ's sake?
At some point during this marathon Zoom, we're going to find out about how Alan Kross and Ivar Hamilton have all the vinyl from CFNY. So we're going to get those stories. But thank you, Dani. Maie Pauts. I got to hear this voice. What a voice.
Hello.
How you doing, Maie?
I'm good. How are you? Nice to connect again. Nice to see everyone. I'm actually prepared with my wine. And because you know what? I'm treating this like a cocktail party.
Yes, it is.
I don't get to see, we haven't seen each other in so long. So I'm looking at this as a great opportunity for some old friends to hang out and, shoot the whatever. So cheers to you all. I haven't started drinking yet because I want to be able to make it for the show. But yeah, I'm ready.
I'm going to crack
I'm a
one
lightweight
open.
now. The pandemic has ruined me.
I'm going to crack one open right now, a Great Lakes beer,
Okay.
because I'm going to drink.
Beautiful.
So cheers to all of you. And we're not quite done the roll call yet here. But Maie, what year did you start at CFNY?
This was finally resolved last year. We finally figured it was 1987, May of 87 that I officially started.
Okay.
And but I was hanging out because I was at CCAMW, where Scot was.
Who was at that call?
And so I started coming down the hall to CFNY through the 83, 86 period an awful lot.
Yeah. It's funny. Scott, you started at CKMW too, right?
Can't see anybody.
And it's funny at the time hearing you and Maie on CKMW, the buzz in the hall. It won't take long for Marsden to jump on those people.
And Fred, you were really helpful because you were like, come on down the hall. Come on down the hall.
Okay, couple more intros, and then we're gonna get right into those early days. We're gonna start at the launch. The last couple of intros. Last but not least, Jay, we're closing with you, but Phil, you're on this Zoom, even though we can't see you. Captain Phil.
That's why I'm out of this business in the telecoms. I'm just terrible at it. Captain Phil Evans, but Captain with a K after Scott Turner changed his name in the early 80s.
All right.
I was there in May of 86, boat driver until 1990, promotion director through the 90s and the early 21st century.
And Phil, so glad you're here, whether we can see you or not. It's great to have your voice on the program. And last but not least, Jay Brody, current morning show host at 102.1. How you doing, Jay?
Hey, it's great to be here. Started February 2020. I'm really grateful to be here with you guys. You guys paved the roads that I drive to work on every morning, so it's a great honor for me to be here. With that being said, I would trade my job right now for either Scott Turner's hair in the 80s or David's hair right now. So if anyone wants that, take me up on that offer. I would do it right away.
That hair that David Marsden is rocking right now is really unbelievable. Like, I thought it was a wig.
No, it's real.
And there are some photos of David at Chum FM in the early 70s where you had very, very cool long hair, but that's actually longer, I think.
Oh,
It
yes.
is.
I think you're right.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
You're right, Scott.
It just, I don't know. That's called COVID hair.
Yeah.
It hasn't been cut since COVID.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, you're the same. Well, we ought to share hair jokes together.
You're all looking great. You're all looking great. So glad you're here. We're going to go back to 1977 here. So, and you guys you were there, some of you at least were there in 77, 78. But my understanding is, Chic FM rebrands, it turns into CFNY in 77. Who would like to speak to the origin, the launch of CFNY in 1977?
You're kidding. It was Chick FM, not Chic
Chick
FM.
FM. Yes,
It was
absolutely.
Chick FM because
Right,
at the
right.
time it
Where
was
the
all
girls are.
Yeah, all women work there. You didn't know that, Boone? I thought we had told you that.
I did know that, and then I forgot I knew that, and I screwed up already. I'll have to fix this in post. But
Deanie Petty worked there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Deanie Petty worked there, and it was all chicks that were working there?
Yeah, an all-female.
That was at the AM.
Yeah.
Not at the FM.
Not the FM, but it was Chick FM as well.
But Chick FM was 102.1?
Mm-hmm.
So
I can
years
tell you-
ago, when I met Nick Charles on overnights, he was overnights at CFNY and I was doing 790. He gave me, and I still have them somewhere in a box downstairs, match packages from Chick, Where the Girls Are.
Yeah.
I have those match packages.
I'd like to tell the story from when I walked in the door, because as I think I said earlier, that was 77 or 78. I really don't remember. But I met with Harry and Leslie at their fancy offices in Yorkville. And I mean, it was Antique City. It was fancy, fancy, fancy. I didn't know who Harry was. I was meeting with Leslie. Leslie was dressed up in a $9,000 suit and a $400 tie. Everything was perfect. The tan, it was lovely. And this other guy walks in, and Leslie says, I was with Don Schaefer, by the way. He was in the original package. This guy walks in, and Leslie says, Harry, get these boys a couple of coffees. I didn't know who it was. And then he brought the coffee. And then Leslie said, sit down. And then he introduces this coffee boy as, this is my brother, Harry. And then we were like, what? Anyway, so Schaefer decided to go his way, which was Vancouver. And I started there as an announcer. I had just come from Chum FM. And the first day I walked into the little yellow house up in Brampton there, it was the most filthy place on earth. It was, oh my God. And every chair only had 3 legs. It was unbelievable. it was totally unbelievable. And I thought, should I just turn around and go home? Because this doesn't look good. And then I went upstairs to the control room. The control room was like this little miniature room with a ceiling that if you were over 6 feet, you had to bend down. And it had an old Gates board there from, I don't know, the 1800s. And I decided to stay for some reason. I don't know why, because I thought this is really ridiculous. And the albums were kept just outside the studio. And there's really nobody in the place. There was a wonderful woman behind the desk who kind of apologized for the dirt. One night, the first year or so that I was on the air, the turntables were back here on my left side. There were only 2 of them. And all of a sudden, one turntable is going clip, and I'm thinking, oh, it's got a skip in the vinyl. And in those days, we used to have distilled water, and you put a little bit of distilled water on the vinyl, and the needle would hydroplane over the skip. And I turned around to put the water on. There was a mouse on the turntable, and every time it went around, it hit the arm, and the arm would jump up, and then it would go. And I just didn't know what to do. I just freaked out. I mean, I'm not a big follower for mice, no matter, even if my name did just have to be Mickey. But that was how it all began for me. It was just crazy. I remember, I'll just go one more story, and then I'll stop. I also remember, and Dani will like this story, Rainer Schwartz was on the air there on Sunday afternoons. And I'm listening one day. By the way, I lived up in North York at the time, and you couldn't get the station in North York. So it wasn't the best signal. But so I was listening, and all of a sudden I hear this voice on the air with Rainer. And the voice is Leslie Allen. And Leslie says, on air, live, I want you to play this. And Rainer took the album and he went, hey, I can't play the Bee Gees. Ultimately, he did play the Bee Gees, but he talked all through it, and it was just ridiculous. So those are 2 little early stories.
So I'll chime in because I wasn't there. I was calling it chic. Okay, that's how much I know. But I will chime in with a few like facts along the way, and then we'll capture your stories, which is most important to me. But so Leslie and Harry Allen Jr., they're the owners of CFNY, which
that is correct.
So and CFNY comes out of Chick FM in 1977, and I understand the first program director before you, David, is Dave Pritchard.
Oh, I'd like to speak to that if you don't mind.
Go ahead, my friend.
There was a bad rumor going about that I had actually fired David Pritchard, which I did not. David was a friend. David's son, Christian, who some of you may know, he's a chef. He's quite on television a lot. Christian and I have talked a lot about this. And because David left us too early, I never had a chance to discuss it with him. But there's just no way I would ever have gone in there. I did not go in as program director. I just went in as an announcer. David was long gone by the time I got there.
David,
and I still love David.
And I mentioned this to you before I pressed record, but I recently had a conversation with Lee Eckley. And Lee swears that he was fired from his gig at CFNY and replaced with you. So this is the Lee's on it, and so you did come in as, of course, you came in as a announcer, and then I guess in 1978, when Leslie and Harry fired Dave Pritchard, they make you the program director.
Yeah, I don't know when they dismissed him. I don't remember the Lee Eckley story, but I know Lee, and I'm sure he remembers better than I. You know, I'm a little bit older here. And so I don't remember. I mean, when I first joined there, Al Spring was doing mornings.
That's who I started with.
With Al Spring.
Yeah, he was the morning man. Remember, he used to walk around with his can of Pepsi.
Oh yeah.
Well, I used to see him whenever I saw him. No, whenever I saw him, he had a bottle of Aqua Velva.
No, he used to carry a can of Pepsi, and we knew there was booze in it. So I'd go up to him and I'd say, "Al, I'm really thirsty. Can I have a sip of your Pepsi?" And he'd go, "No, you can't. Get your own."
Well, it's too
He
bad.
died. He died young too, eh?
He's another one who died much too young.
Yeah.
I don't remember who did middays. Maybe that was that.
That McElligott, Terry McElligott, maybe.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, I think you're right, Terry McGillicuddy. Yeah, as a matter of fact, he was the first DJ anywhere in the world to play Baker Street.
Mm.
And of course, Baker Street became this massive hit. And shortly thereafter, he was playing that at CHFI, I think.
Amazing.
Yeah, I don't remember who. I just remember I was doing, I think, 6 to 10 or 7 to 11. And I don't remember what was around me at all.
Let me just bring in Ivar Hamilton and Leslie Kross here, because you guys were there in the late 70s. What do you remember about? Because I've heard the legends of the yellow house. David did a good job talking about the mouse and the turntable and everything. But what do you remember about that old yellow brick house there?
Some great memories in there. I mean,
this one.
Yes. Yeah.
Nice. Freddie P is holding a picture of it. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's a vacant lot now up in Brampton. Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because, they had CHIC, the newsroom was down the street, and then 340 Main Street is where the radio station itself was. I started in my internships in the music library, and we were, it was an absolute mess when I started there. And we worked pretty hard to put it back together, but it was a small team up there. David was right. We only had the very basics and those 3-legged chairs. But I remember the constant visits to the radio station back in those early days. Like there was a ton of artists that came to the radio station. And I remember one in particular was when Frank Zappa came to the radio station, and he came up with a coffee machine, and he was on the air for the whole night. It was quite incredible, and canceled all his other interviews, and he was just having a whale of a time. And there was and then there ended up being a giant party out in the parking lot because all the listeners showed up and wanted to, see Frank and what was going on with that. I do remember Ted Wallishin, one Sunday afternoon, he was on the air, and I came in, I was doing some production work or something, and he had a giant cooler in the control room, but he was having the best time. And he was there with John Candy on the air. And I'll never forget that, John Candy came to visit. I remember a bunch of blues artists coming to visit. Tom Petty came to visit when it was the early days of the Heartbreakers. Ian Hunter. It was like the list was Boomtown Rats, Ultravox, Deep Purple, all came to visit the radio station. So I have some great memories of people coming to visit that station. Japan, David can jump in on that when he took them across the street to the supermarket.
Yeah, well, I could do that. I want to tell at some point the story of how Ivar became full-time and what he did at the time, which was astounding. The Japan thing, those of you who know Japan, they're always in almost full drag. Not the kind of drag you see in those contests on TV, but the full makeup, everything. And they said to me, because by now I was kind of half programming, and they said, before we do the interview, we need to get something to eat. And I said, well, there's not much around here, but I can run over to Ziggy's, which was in the Loblaws or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And I can get you a sandwich. And he said, no, take us over to Ziggy's. It sounds cool. But so we walk across the street. We walk across the street to the Loblaws where the Ziggy's is. And the four of them come in and they are just outrageous, beautiful, but outrageous. And about 700 old women who were shopping in the Loblaws dropped their purses, just stood there and didn't know what to do. And I admire the fact that Japan, the members of Japan, just kind of took it all in and it didn't bother them. They were waving and saying hi. And they picked up some bagels and something, and we went back and they did the interview.
Love it. Love it.
It was a funny moment that afternoon.
So, David, before we get your Ivar Hamilton origin story, I know I called on Leslie earlier, but I'm messing up my L names. I meant Liz because Liz, you show up in 77. Leslie doesn't get there till like 82, so we'll get to her soon. But Liz, what are your memories of those late 70s, years at CFNY?
Well, I started working there because David Pritchard was the program director at the time. And David Pritchard had been the all-night DJ on Chum FM during the heydays of Chum FM. And I used to wire up my bedroom down the clothesline to pick up Chum FM to listen to David. And when I got to Ryerson, David took me under his wing and started training me how to be a DJ. And so he was program director initially. I think Reiner Schwartz was in between for a very short period of time as a program director. And as a female on the air, one of the things that Chick Radio did for us chicks was convinced every broadcaster in the city that chicks shouldn't be on the air. So I was very grateful to David when he gave me a chance to be on the air. And there's actually it was kind of like a psychic story behind me starting on the air. And that is, I was a single mom at the time. And my parents said, okay, this radio thing that you're doing, it has to pay off. You're a mom now. So I had a sort of side career in the microcomputer, we call them personal computers today, industry. That was really quite exciting, but I wanted to be in radio. And so we made a deal, my parents and I promised them if I did not have an on-air job full-time by January 1st, 1980, I would leave radio.
Wow.
On December 31st, 1979, David called and gave me the all-night show. Thanks, David.
Did David know about the ultimatum?
No.
Wow.
No.
It was between my parents and myself.
Meant to be.
And I have to say, I'll interrupt for a moment. I have to say that Liz Janik overnights at CFNY was nothing short of amazing and wonderful. Except that one night when she went out to get a coffee out of her car.
Yes.
Yeah, you hear that door behind you and you know you're shit out of luck. I can say that on a podcast. It was the last track on a television album. It was only 5 minutes long.
Oh, man.
So I had to call Brad McNally, who came back and let me back into the station some 25 minutes later.
Yeah. So for 25 minutes, we heard.
Love it. And Liz, for the record, you can say anything you want. Swears are all good here. Freddie P., I want to hear how you end up on the air at CFNY.
Well, it's fine. I grew up in Scarborough, and my mom and dad had this small pool, and I'd lay out there and listen to Rock 102 from Buffalo. Remember that station? And then I think when CFNY signed on the air, the signal was really shitty, but it would skip or whatever it would do. Sometimes during the day, I'd start hearing this weird station that would come over 102.5 in Buffalo. And I used to say, what the hell is that shit? Well, why? Well, what's happened? What's happened to my radio station? Anyway, the point of that story is within 2 years of that, I'm working for the radio station. And most of the people here went there out of their passion for music. Well, I went out of a passion for a job. And, like anything else, I was working at CKFH and I was just writing traffic reports and doing some operating. I wanted to get on the air. I heard about a job opportunity in Brampton, met with a guy named Rick Charles. He was the No, it was Peter Heskey, his name was. And then he worked with Rick Charles. And they hired me to do news and sports. And almost instantly, I was talking to David. And Mike Stafford was around. And they teamed me and Mike Stafford up as the news and sports team. That's like in 1979, before Pete and Geets, actually. We were the news and sports team. And it was, it was amazing. It was just, it happened really, really fast. And I was so lucky because I got out of college and got that job at CKFH, not doing what I wanted. And within, Pete and Geets came in 1980, the summer of 80. Like within 2 years, I'm, for all intents and purposes, working for a major market morning show. So I was really fortunate that way and learned so much from those guys and learned so much from David. It was fantastic.
Brad, you brought up, what was the call sign in Buffalo?
Rock 102.
Yes. So they were 102 point something.
102.5.
Yes. And when Harry and Leslie went to the CRTC,
yes,
what they said to the CRTC is, we'll block out that Buffalo station. And of course, in those days, the CRTC was good.
Right.
And it recognized Canada first.
Yes.
Here's something you may not have thought of. Buffalo is in a place called New York.
Yes.
New York sometimes is called NY.
Yes.
That's how we got the call. That's how they got the call letters.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because I would listen on my mom and dad on one of those old Lloyd stereos, with the twist dial, so it wasn't very precise. And again, when NY signed on, it used to crowd that signal. Yeah. I didn't know. I had heard it was New Youth or.
No, it was NY. It was New York.
For New York. Wow. All right.
Yeah.
I just learned something.
Yeah, I was gonna say, drop any mind blows like that you can. And David, I'm coming back to you for two reasons. One is, I want to hear the Ivar Hamilton superhero origin story, but also if you could speak to the sale of CFNY. So Leslie and Harry Allen Jr. sell it to, and I'm probably going to miss, is it Civitas?
Civitas.
So close. I will fix that in post as well. David, so you've got a bunch of stuff on your menu here. I need to hear about Ivar, and I need to hear what you can share with us about the sale to Civitas.
Would you like that now, or do you want to go through everybody else and then come back to me? It's up to you.
I'm sort of I'm going chronologically, so yeah, so we're okay. So to you now, because you're obviously it's going to be heavy Mars bar at the beginning, as people would suspect.
Sorry about that, everybody.
We love it, David. We love it almost as much as we love your hair. Please, let's hear this.
I don't know about this hair. I might have it cut off tomorrow.
No, don't. I love it. It's great.
Exactly.
So give me, I'm sorry, could you point?
You wanted to tell the Ivar Hamilton story, so we can start with that. And then I'm just curious, I'm always curious how the sausage is made, but the sale to Civitas, what that affected. Yeah.
Well, the Ivar Hamilton story, I'll do as quickly as I can, and I hope Ivar doesn't mind me telling it. He had been hired on, and in those days, there was very little money for anybody, including myself, I might add. And one day Ivar rolled into my office. I was sitting in this filthy office. I had only 3 legs on the chair, that whole thing. And Ivar comes in and he said, David, I need to make some more money. And if you can't give me more money, then I'm going to have to go somewhere else. And I knew that we had something in Ivar Hamilton. It hadn't been worked out. He hadn't been developed yet, but there was something about this guy. So I said, well, I can't get you any more money. And Ivar says, well, I have an idea. To an old guy, he says, I could do record hops for the station and take whatever money the high schools or whoever will give me. I said, that's a great idea. Go have it, do it. So Ivar was out with his Camaro, and he would go to the high school and he would play songs and records. The kids would dance, and it was like the 50s all over again. And then some magic took place, because suddenly we realized Ivar was onto something. So we decided to change the name to the Road Show. It wasn't video yet because we hadn't reached the video point yet. And Ivar would go out and he would do the high schools under the name of the CFNY Roadshow. And then came video, and we had to hire a couple of people. I got a sponsor called Milk. They sponsored it. And then we had so much equipment because of all the video screens and everything. We had so much equipment, we didn't know what to do. But we knew we had to get a bigger truck. A big truck. So we got a 5-ton truck. But then we didn't have anybody to drive it. And you have to have a special license, apparently, to drive a 5-ton truck. So this guy came into my office one afternoon looking for a job. And I said, you know, if you could get a chauffeur's license or whatever it's called, you could get a job. You'll be involved with the CFNY Video Roadshow, which was going out in those days 2 to 3 times a week. And it was playing everywhere. It was playing Buffalo. I mean, sellout shows at Ontario Place, sellout shows at Kingswood Theatre, Music Theatre. And this guy who's sitting there, he says, he's like 17, 18 years old, this guy. And he said, well, I'll just go and do that. So he went and did that. I'm sitting in my office, a couple of months have now passed. And I'm sitting there in my office and I hear this screaming, I got it, says this guy. Run up and down the halls. And what he got was his chauffeur's license, and he was then able to become the driver of the 5-ton truck. The guy's name was Martin Short. Not Martin Short.
That's a whole different story than I expected. No, Martin
I've
Street.
never heard that one before.
That's amazing.
You can edit that out. His name was, I'll do a cut for you so you can do it. And his name was Martin Street.
Wow.
You know
His
what?
name was Martin Sheen. Why don't we just keep putting Martins in there?
You know what? I forgot that, David. And as soon as you said that, it's like I remember it. He was absolutely ecstatic. You've never seen anybody so excited to be able to be on board.
There was just another guy involved, but Ivar, I can't. I always had trouble remembering his name.
It's Roger Roadshow, but his real
Yeah.
name.
Yes.
And we started with a little a company out of Etobicoke, and then it grew, as you say, when we had the sponsorship with Milk, and we had our Alberto Balsam sponsorship that we took to Ontario Place, and the moat at Ontario Place was filled with thousands of cans of bottles of Alberto Moose, and we were so successful we were asked to leave.
Ivar, if I can jump in there, I was actually working at Ontario Place when you guys brought the roadshow over. And this was before I worked for CFNY. I drove the showboat with you guys from the main island to the other island. And then everyone sprayed the whole place with that moose, the Alberto VO5 or whatever it was.
Yes,
it was crazy and scary.
It was kind of scary because I remember it just seemed like we did it one summer and it was okay. So we got a second summer at Ontario Place. And I think the first show was like, wow, that's quite a bit bigger than last year. And by about the third show, it seemed like every kid in the city of Toronto every week was descending on Ontario Place, where it was getting to the point where we were doing like 8,000 to 10,000 people every week. And it just became unmanageable by the end of the summer. I mean, I think we all fell over with exhaustion by the end of the summer.
And it all started, I'll just do this if you don't mind. It all started with Ivar Hamilton saying, I need to make a few more bucks.
Wow.
And when you're 7,000 a year, as I was back then, you needed to do something, right?
Well, hey, on that note, in 1982, my daughter Melanie was born, who's going to turn 40, by the way.
Wow. No way.
In September. I remember just after she was born, David called me into his office and he said, congratulations on the birth of your daughter. And I said, thank you very much, David. And he said, Fred, we'd love to pay you more money because you're a father now. And I was one of the first fathers of the crew. He said, "We'd love to pay you more money because you're a father now, but we just can't. Listen, maybe we can contra you some diapers or something. I'll look into it." It never happened, but you did.
Your heart was in the right place. Two quick.
Your heart was in the right place. Yeah.
Thank you.
Quick housekeeping notes here from the host here. One is congratulations to Captain Phil Evans for getting his camera to work.
Yay!
Hey, Philly.
Hi, Phil.
And secondly, welcome humble Howard Glassman to the CFNY.
Hello, Howie.
Fred, do you know Howard? Do you remember working with him?
Yes. Over an extended period of time, yes.
Ivar, maybe you're the man for this question. Maybe it's you, Liz, Janik, but who can speak to the because we've heard a lot of David, and I want to hear more David, don't get me wrong, but I got to get some other voices in here to talk about the programming at the time. So I'm still curious, like, what happened when Leslie and Harry Allen Jr. sell CFNY to Civitas, and how did that affect the programming at all? And maybe tell some of the younger people, like Jay Brody, what was the programming of CFNY in the late 70s, early 80s?
Well, I think when I first started, it was pretty much a free for all. But I think when oh, I'm sorry, I got my my dog disapproves.
That dog has its own Instagram account.
Sorry, guys. Anyway, so it was pretty free for all back in the 77, 78. But when David got there, we sort of started to restructure things and brought some kind of semblance of order. But I mean, the thing is that we played basically every track on an album was available to play. That was, some things were day parted. And as long as we got our Canadian content in, and we had a few some categories that were what we kind of made our own hits, and those were the things that were CFNY hits, and a lot of things that we stressed were exclusives. And there was in those early days there was a very wide variety outside of alternative. I mean, there was a lot of guys played jazz. A lot of people played some classical in the mix, some blues, and then eventually as time went on, some of those things kind of got squeezed out. But we were a station that served just about everybody in those early days, apart from Top 40.
I remember a good dose of reggae too.
Absolutely, reggae was paramount.
Yeah, that's how I discovered Bob Marley was just by being a DJ at the station. And so when we first started, it was just everything goes, electronic music, jazz, all that. And we were playing older music as well. And then when David started to put his vision into play, we dropped everything that was older than 5 or 10 years, I think. They were all out the door. So we weren't carrying the baggage of all those songs from 40 years ago, like perhaps some current stations are doing. And we put into a system where we had to play a pattern of familiar songs and unfamiliar songs and we were allowed to program the mood or the atmosphere of the day. Back in those days, when the sun was coming up at 4:30 in the morning, I could run a microphone out the station's bathroom window to catch the sound of the birdies in the morning. Now, outside that window was a shed, and listeners used to crawl up that shed and try to crawl into the bathroom window. So it was a little kind of all over the place. But the structure in the music gave the listeners a chance to hear something they knew and something they never would have heard before. And it so captures what the audience is like for a station like the Spirit of Radio. The audience is passionate about music and they love all kinds of music. They almost have no patience for oldies because they're still exploring music. And that's the heartbeat of a true alternative. People who are passionate about music, all kinds.
And maybe, and again, I will stop asking about this if it meant nothing changed, but did anything change when the station was sold to Civitas?
Yeah, pretty much what I just described. David made it more structured. Okay. What else did they do to you, David?
I don't know if I think everybody remembers when it was announced that the station had been taken away from Harry and Leslie because they had done some things they shouldn't have with their other businesses. But we had a signal that, it fell off the tower and dropped to the ground. And if you weren't within 110 feet of it, it was really difficult to hear CFNY in those days. But I knew we had to do something different. Q107 was just coming on the air at about the same time. And I was very nervous that we were going to lose what we had built. And when I say we, I mean we, all of us together. We built this thing. So one night on my show, I decided to ask for people to sign petitions. And it went way beyond anything I ever expected. I mean, people were sending us petitions with literally hundreds and hundreds of names on them. It blew up completely. It was fantastic. At the same time, a couple of the other folks in the station, namely, I guess, Brad McNally, Ivar Hamilton, I can't remember who else, Ivar, decided to write a song about 102.1. I don't remember all the names, but they wrote the song and we played it with 102.1 Street Band, I think it was called. I'm not sure.
102.1.
Sorry there, Ivar.
It was 102.1 band.
Yeah. And all of those things together put the CRTC on notice, because it wasn't about the buyers I was worried about at that point. I was worried about the CRTC giving it to some, because there were 8 or 9 people applied to buy that radio station. And Civitas won it. They were a Montreal organization. This was their first English radio station. And they called me into a meeting one day and asked me, what the fuck are you guys doing? It was that blunt. And you can edit that out if you need to. And so I spent about 2 hours selling them on leaving it alone. And at the end of the meeting, they promised me that they would leave it alone. And that was when I got the titles. But the listeners and all of the other DJs and the 102.1 Street Band, everybody deserves applause.
David, can I ask you, sorry, can I ask you a question? Were you genuinely surprised at the amount of support that the station had at that time?
Yes, only because our signal was so bad. I mean, I lived in North York. I couldn't hear the station at home.
No.
And we were stuck with that until Selkirk took over, and then we figured out a way to get to the CN tower. But yes, I was blown away, actually. I think all of us in the station at that time were.
One little thing about the sale with Harry and Leslie Allen. When I started in 1979, the station was actually in receivership.
Yes.
And when I got the job, Rick Charles said to me, just so you know, you've got the job, but you could come here one morning and the doors will be locked. Like, you may not be able to get in. They may be shutting this place down. And again, I didn't care. I had a job and I thought, oh, well, I'll take that chance. It never happened, but that was the circumstance when I started.
I will tell you, when the license was taken away from them, someone from the CRTC, and I don't know who, contacted me and said, we're going to shut you down until we find a new owner.
Wow. Now, we're talking about the signal, so I want to get us to the transmitter on the CN tower.
Yeah. Do you guys remember the...
Go ahead, Fred.
What was his name? Ed Prevo was his name?
Yeah.
He was a good guy. He was a good guy.
But I think it's worth David speaking to, like, besides the 102.1 band, was just the support from the listenership at the time. That a lot of people banded together to try, save this, outreach and petition to the CRTC. I remember, a number of clients offering up money to give support to the radio station, but the listeners in particular were just so super supportive that they absolutely did not want to lose this radio station, which I think really went, a long way in getting the Civitas sale through to through, and obviously keeping yourself on as the leader.
I was doing, I think, evening 7 to 11 or something. I was absolutely, in this answer, again, I'll answer Dani's question. All of us, I think, were just like, whoa, where is this call coming from? Because we really didn't know we had that many listenership. It was quite a thing. I'm sorry?
It's an amazing story. I mean, there aren't that many examples that I can think of in the history of radio where there's been such a rise of that kind of support.
Yeah, it was, I mean, even today, I thank everybody who signed. The only other time I got that much reaction, remember when I was at Chum FM and they didn't want to bring Pink Floyd to Toronto and I convinced them to do it with again, using this, that was years before. But again, I used petitions and all that sort of thing.
All right.
So it was pretty cool.
Can you speak?
Wonder what happened to you remember we did the vault? We did it was like we took all the air shifts that we recorded and a whole bunch of stuff and we put it in what the hell was that?
A time capsule, Leslie?
Time capsule, thank you. What happened to that?
Was it an actual safe, Leslie?
What's a time capsule, Phil?
I remember something about that.
Where is that?
I don't remember that, Leslie.
We need to find that.
Well, if they buried it in the old house, it's gone.
Yeah, the old house is gone, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it is. Yeah.
There was a big vault in the old house. It was a walk-in vault, and it was always rumored that that's where the Allen brothers kept all their movies, the old Charlie Chaplin movies, and it was worth millions of dollars. It was reported, and then one day somebody opened the vault, and it was empty. There was nothing.
Geraldo moment, if there ever was one.
I'm sorry?
I said another Geraldo moment, if there ever was
one. I think
it was an amazing. It was younger people, but united in this belief that we were doing the right thing and we were giving the people what they wanted, and it was this like visceral sense. You could just feel it in the air. I have never, it's like that was my first job. And I've never experienced anything like that since. It was just so completely amazing.
Leslie, one person who deserves and we're now moved on to Selkirk days, but Bill Hutton was a great strength. And I'd say, okay, I want to ask you something. And I would do a pitch on him. And invariably, I don't think I ever heard him say no. Invariably, he said, prove it to me. And I did my best. And then he'd say, okay, let's spend the money and do it. And things like Locky Jockeys. Who the hell would have ever thought that would be? I mean, seriously, I still have a few of them somewhere. But even when I went to Bill about the Casbys or the Awards, and it was like, yeah, let's do that. And there was a lot of money spent on the first few years until we got a sponsor. So Bill Hutton really gets my standing ovation.
Yeah, he was quite something. And he was a tough guy, right? Like he had a reputation of being a really tough businessman.
Do you know what his nickname was? A fireman.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah,
because he fired people. He went to LBC in London and fired everybody.
I know. Stafford and I come into work one morning. We used to get there. We start at 5:30. We get in just after 5. And he was already in his office. And that day the shit hit the fan. Because he expected, being an old newsman, that we should have been in there a lot earlier than that. And he scared the shit out of me that day, I'll tell you.
Remember
you know,
he gave you a little embroidered thing for the newsroom? Always ask yourself, why is this bastard lying to me? Do you remember that?
Yes. Yeah. Because he was a newsman at heart.
Yeah.
Because I know the odd time I'd mispronounce the name of a city or something, and he'd call me in and, that's Worcester, Massachusetts, not Worcester. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
He would go down to the HQ at Bloor and Young and talk to, I can't remember his name, Ken Baker, and say, yes, they're doing this, and don't tell me I can't have the money. He was always behind the scenes doing it. And he gets a standing ovation from me for sure. And all of us, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I think we lost.
Yep. And he died, what, about 10 years ago or something?
Well, the last time I chatted with him, I was in Vancouver and I was watching the news and I'd heard that he had received some award for something.
Yeah.
I found out what hotel he was in, and I sent a big bottle of very expensive wine to him.
How expensive, Dave? How expensive?
I don't remember.
I was
working for the CBC, so you know. But he phoned me, and I said hello, and he said it's Bill, and I said hi, Bill, and he said you're always. I can't remember what he said. Your timing is always so good. That's what he said to me. But Leslie, you might, I mean, looking at.
Oh my God. You know what? I remember, it's so funny how you like certain things, right? I remember interviewing with you. So I was working in the newsroom as an intern, and Mary Curtis said to me, we have this job and, it's going to be working for David. And do you want to talk to him? And I said, oh, okay. And I was going to be a journalist and save the world. I'm in the newsroom. You guys are doing, I'm listening. I love the music, but I don't really know what you're doing. And David, I remember the interview. I sat in the chair. You sat in that love seat against the back wall, legs crossed, ashtray on the seat beside you. So you're smoking, I'm smoking. You can't see in the room for the smoke. And it was this, I just thought, oh my God, this guy's so cool. And you were just so kind. And I think I started the next week, and I used to leave the station at the end of the day, and I'd be ready to go home, and I'd stop at the door at the top of the stairs, and I just think, did I do this? Did I get that? Did I do this? Did I get it all in? It was magical. It was absolutely magical. I loved it.
Well,
Can I just jump in and say that Leslie is failing to also capture her time as the voice of the entertainment listings in Toronto.
All the 102 club and concert line at 454.
What a natural.
Yeah.
How are you doing, Phil? How are you doing?
I'm lovely. This is fantastic. I mean, just seeing all your faces, I'm sitting in a room by myself, but to see you is really cool. What a lovely set of stories, and I'm looking forward to getting to 1981.
Okay. So, can we talk about that?
Oh, but wait, we still have.
Okay, I'll shut up for a while.
Here. So I want to get through the 80s, absolutely.
We have to talk about.
Go ahead.
We have to talk about Rush and the spirit of radio and the story of how they wrote it for the station.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And David, I guess you know that, or who knows that story best?
Are you asking me to tell that story?
I know it from my point of view, but how about yours?
Okay, I was driving in the car. It was a lunch hour, and I had gone and had something to eat. And there wasn't a lot to do in Brampton in those days. It was a pretty small town.
Uh-huh.
And I'm driving back from wherever I was, and I was thinking about 102.1, and we need some kind of a little slogan, but slogans can be really corny and really, and suddenly out of nowhere, I don't know if it was as if someone spoke to me from somewhere up there. Boom, the spirit of radio. And I went back and we put it into action almost immediately. I think we were still in the little Rello house when that happened. As for the Rush thing, Ivar knows the story as well, but I'll let him finish the story. My story was that their manager called and he said, we're releasing our new album tomorrow. And there's a song on it called The Spirit of Radio. In fact, the album Spirit of Radio. And he said, what do you think about that? And I said, I don't know. Can I get 3 points on the album? And we'll go with that. And I said to him, I said, that's fine. You know, we're definitely going to still be CFNY, The Spirit of Radio. And that's about all I remember. I do know that on the vinyl, if you have an old vinyl, if you look on the insert in the middle of the album, the serial number is in there, and the serial number is 1021.
Wow.
So they were kind to us. And then, of course, when they had their big celebration, Ivar put together a whole lot of stuff recently for the big celebration. And one of the things he was kind enough to do was put in 2 images of what's his name, David Marsden, and the CFNY logo was in the back of the video. That was in a what do they call that? Animated album. You can tell them more, Ivar. I don't know much more than that. Am I the only one here?
No. Ivar, you there, buddy?
His mic's off.
Ivar.
What I was going to say, I was in on the production of the Permanent Waves 40th anniversary, and there's a fabulous liner notes that were put together. A Rush super fan out of Buffalo, New York, named Ray Wozniak, and he just took such attention to detail to make sure that CFNY was properly recognized, both in the story and the liner notes. Both David and myself were interviewed for that, and then they put treatments together for the video. And when I first saw it, and I was like, "What the fuck are you guys doing?" It was like all this California beach scene. As I said, that's nothing to do with what the Spirit of Radio is all about. And they just ended up, going back to the drawing board. And a gentleman who made the video named David Calcano, who's a fabulous animator. He took it all in, and they came up with the animation to show the radio station in that video. So I think that, over the years that, Rush is always, acknowledged CFNY, even though it's, they were also careful to be neutral because it became a global anthem. And I do recall, in later years that when we did, when I was in my Polygram days, we did a couple of Spirit of the Edge compilations. And on the second one, one of the persons I worked with had the idea to get it re-recorded by Catherine Wheel. So that was a second life for the song. But they wanted to interview Rush about it at the time, at the time, which I think it was probably 97, 98, that the station wouldn't play the original Spirit of Radio. So it kind of left a little bit of not a good taste in the mouth of Rush, but it's all good now, and some wonderful history on that song.
I'm thoroughly enjoying this, and I apologize if I've come in and out. I've had my own internet issues here, but I am capturing all this gold. Don't worry. But who can speak to the significance of the getting the transmitter on the CN Tower in 1983 and that party that I heard about this party at the CN Tower?
I can tell you a quick story, and I'm sorry it's me again.
Okay.
Both Civitas and Selkirk tried a few times to get us on the CN Tower, and it never worked. One day I walked into Bill Hutton's office and I said, I think I have the idea. Well, what would that be? I said, there's a lot of people who live in Brampton, but they drive to Toronto to work. Why are they being cheated out of hearing their local station when they're at work. And it worked. It did the job. That was what got us the CN Tower.
Hey, remember though, Dave, there was talk, remember we were going to go on the top of the Bank of Commerce or the Bank of Montreal first, remember?
Yes.
That plan was in the works, and then the opportunity came for the CN Tower.
Yeah, I think it had to do with the fact that radio stations on the top of the tower kind of fade out once you get out into the Oshawa Whitby area.
Right.
And then when it was kind of like, it was just one of those, I remember that event, the CN Tower breakfast.
As you can tell, I raided all the walls of CFNY when we left Kennedy Road, and this I have this poster, and I have it in the bathroom in my basement. We have your push button. Do you remember this thing?
That. We have your push button. That was like 40 years ahead of its time.
Yeah. And,
I also like the I'm on top part. That always amused me too.
Yeah.
Hey, David, I really like that impression of Bill Hutton. That was, people do impressions of you.
Oh.
But that was a good one of Bill Hutton. I hadn't heard that before.
Well, he did talk for there.
Hey, a quick David Marsden impression. I told this when you were teaching me a few tricks. It was like, Scott, it's not on CFNY.
It's from
CFNY. I typed that 100 times.
Yeah.
Scott, while I'm here,
DJ meetings, I said that too.
Scott, while I hear your beautiful voice there, what's the story with the spelling of your first name? Like, because it was Skot, right?
Yeah, and that was, one of those cool little things that David suggested, because I think we had there was Scott Eagleson, James Scott. There was, I think, another Scott in the station at the time, and it kind of started around just too many Scots. And, I think David was trying to mold me into a personality, which I was kind of awkward and, learning my way. And David had many, different personas and different, from the David Mickey, and he knew it all, right. From Mars Bar and David Marsden, and it's like, this guy needs to learn a little personality style. So he helped me along the way. And one of the things was, why don't you spell your name with a K?
And lose a T, right? Because you're supposed to have two P's in there.
Like, okay, that sounds awesome.
Okay.
Let me please chime in to say my sincere condolences to you, David, on the loss of your brother, James Baby Scott. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it was, we lost him much too early. He was a great afternoon drive person. I will say this, we never really were brothers. We knew each other, but we never hung out much together. I presume, I don't know what brothers do, to tell you the truth, but I think I went to his house once. He came to my place up in Caledon once, but he left way too early. He and I chatted every day up until the day that he left.
Yeah, that was
your
sad.
brother, and he felt he was your brother. I can tell you that.
Yeah, it was, I grew up in foster homes, and that's a long story that I don't get into, but I think I was probably 16, maybe 17 when I found out that I had a real mother and a brother.
Jesus, yeah.
Wow. You're gone far.
I got in touch with him too, David. I was so glad that I had a chance to kind of say goodbye, and I reminded him of the day that I came to work and I had on a pink dress and pink shoes. And what do you think he played that morning, right? And I never forgot that, so funny.
Pretty in pink, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. So basically, we have Alan Kross. If you're still with us, Alan, I know you show up at CFNY in 86, and then Maie Pauts. Maie, you show up in 87. What I'd like to just address right now is the whole sale to Selkirk. Maybe one of you could speak to the significance of the sale to Selkirk communications.
I wasn't there for the sale. That happened just before I arrived. Same thing with Maie. Selkirk was in charge when I got there.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. So maybe instead of the sale to Selkirk, let's talk about the dark period. Okay. I don't know what else to call this.
Yes.
The mistake of '88.
Right.
One day we were called in, and there was this guy from Montreal with a British accent named Peter Pringle.
Doug Pringle.
No,
Doug
Pringle.
Doug Pringle, sorry. Who was telling us that.
Oh my goodness, really? Doug Pringle?
He came in and he was the consultant, and he said that in this interim, this sale of Selkirk to Rogers Communication, we are going to goose the ratings by changing the format because this alternative thing is dead. We're going to be a top 40 station and go after the biggest slice of the market. And it's not what you play now, it's what you're playing next. And that was the beginning of a period that ran from, I guess, late 88, late 88 through to sometime, I think in 89 or early 90.
And when you say Rogers, you mean McLean Hunter?
No, I mean Rogers. What happened was Rogers had bought Selkirk, but because Rogers had already had its maximum number of FM stations in the market, we were in escrow for 9 months until they figured out how Rogers was going to divest themselves of us. And it took that 9 months for them to figure out that we would go to McLean Hunter. That's what happened. So we were caught in a really, really weird place. Not only were we being sold, but we didn't know who we were being sold to. So in this interim, the management team, who was entrusted with the stewardship of the radio station at the time, decided that they were going to change the format, change the entire feeling of the radio station, boost ratings, boost revenues, so they could keep their job no matter who bought us.
Now, Alan, 1 second though, did they not say that we're going to introduce top 40, but play the best of the alternative? And that they believed it could work together. So you could play Madonna and you could play The Cure, which maybe today can work on Today Radio.
On Mae's station.
But at the time, I think that was part of, I believe, was part of their, or maybe that was the introduction to say, this can work. And they were going to maybe go full top 40, but because they were allowing certain, the mainstream alternatives like a Depeche Mode or a New Order or a Cure into the mix.
Yeah, and we as a staff handled that very well.
Can I just jump in? So the end result of that is that the numbers of people tuning in went up considerably.
Oh,
but
it exploded.
They only listened for one song. So they would listen to Depeche Mode, then we'd play Madonna and they'd leave. Or we play Madonna, then we'd play New Order and they'd leave.
I would mention also too, I was part, just before I left, I was part of when they decided they wanted to do this. And my direction was from Jim Fonger at the time, who told us that we were going to have to play X amount of hits on each and every week. We absolutely must play X amount of hits as part of what we were going to do. So it all transpired. I believe it was on the Labor Day weekend of 1988. And I decided, I helped program it. I was actually given the orders to, go to the, pull all these things from the charts, order all the product from the record labels, go to the library, research all of these things. And I just think I couldn't be around for it. I left town for the weekend, but although, and I think Scott was part of this too, that just, and I think we even recorded a couple of these, right, Scott? Where
yes, we did.
People calling in and going, what the hell? I just think I heard, did I just hear George Michael on your radio station? Did I just hear whoever on the radio station? And people were flipping the fuck out. They were so upset.
And
be also fair to say that it was also because there was a shift in who was now programming and who was management. You mentioned Jim Fonger. This is now a person at the helm giving us directions who came from sales. And people from sales look at things in a very different way than people who are passionate musical programmers. And so not to say that people who love music and love, programming in that sense aren't mindful of sales and how that has to balance in order to survive. But all of a sudden, it was as if the pendulum had swung in a whole different direction as far as management.
And
well, I'd like to quote the late Brad McNally, and I learned this on at his funeral, that Brad used to call the sales department the Taliban. And that's how I think most people felt about what Jim Fonger was doing to that radio station in 1988.
Yeah, but to be fair, and from my perspective as the sportscaster, and again, I like the music. I didn't have the passion of everyone else, but as a father with a couple of kids, and let's not kid ourselves, everybody, the station was struggling. I mean, monetarily, a company takes it over, and what do companies do when they're private companies? How do we make more money? Like, I used to struggle with that myself and go, well, I sort of understand what they're doing. They want to make more money because they own this company. And,
that's a great
to be
point,
fair, and everybody blames the sales department, but again, that was their job too.
Yeah, it's a great point. And, David, before you talk, because I wanted to go to you actually on this note, because just hearing you talk tonight, tell some of those stories. And I think one of the things that it's a takeaway for me listening to these stories and your stories is that the part of what David did, he was such a music programming on-air artist, but a huge amount of his time, and David, maybe you put it in a percentage. Think of all of these years that he has dealt with that force of business, the force of the suits, the force of the money, and trying to do, it's one of the most difficult formats to monetize. Sure. And it was in its infancy before you got to the Edge days in the 90s and beyond. So what a challenge for a person that's really truly at his heart about the music, and him to have to put on that other hat, David, to talk to the suits, to talk in a way that made sense to them and try to do that is amazing, really.
I will say this about sales in terms of national buys, and I didn't know this until Don Schaefer, who was operating Q107, told me about it. There were 3 stations, Chum FM, Q107. Those 2 stations sounded very similar. And then there was CFNY. On all national buys, CFNY always got the number 2 buy. They would buy either Chum or Q, and then they would buy us. And that is, it's funny, I didn't think anybody knew about the Fonger thing, but he was on my case for a year and a half, 2 years about playing Madonna. And I had to keep saying, Jim, no, go back to sales. We'll look after the programming. But I was always there to help sales because that's what you need to do. So we always got the number 2 buy on a 3 buy station. And that in itself, Jim told me that, Chum is playing Madonna and Chum is playing blah, 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 blah. If we play that, we'll be number 1 instead of them. That isn't how it works.
Yeah.
Wow.
And let's face it, ratings is a bit of a game in itself too. Sometimes it's not about selling numbers, it's about selling demographics. Like, for example, with it's the only succinct example I can think of in regards to CFNY, but with the alternative bedtime hour, the idea was that you were selling Carlsberg and it was the live in a world of difference. So it's not necessarily sometimes about being number 1. Sometimes it's about getting a specific kind of audience that your product is going to want, right?
The real thing with Q and Chum is they were doing the similar thing, so people would dial back and forth. As soon as Chum would hit commercials, they go to Q. As soon as Q hit commercials, with us, there was nowhere else to go. And that to me is the strength. As you say, Dani, that is the strength of doing something different. And it's really difficult. It's not easy. Doing something different gets a lot of people arguing with you that, oh, that won't work. I've heard that all my life. Dave Mickey heard that. That won't work.
David, Howard Glassman here. I know I used to work there many years after you. But isn't it interesting that phrase about doing something better isn't always different? Different isn't always better, but better is always different.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of things that I learned later coming after the fact about the radio station that you're talking about that I didn't really understand. And Fred's heard me say this. I never really appreciated in 1989 when I arrived and the station was Planet Chaos. For all the reasons you're saying and some that you haven't talked about. But I didn't understand at the time what the station meant to the audience. I had no perspective. I came from out west. I grew up around, the Fox in Vancouver and stations like that. And so what I think CFNY, what I've learned subsequently, obviously having, known the listeners now for 30 plus years, that it was a unique place in the marketplace. But to your point, Dani, it might have almost been too niche, like for its time, because yes, Carlsberg's a great sponsor for the alternative bedtime hour. There just wasn't enough of those, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, David, to be sustainable. Do you know what I mean? Like there were some, but maybe not enough to make it go of it. I don't know what they were thinking at the time. I'm just thinking that it had a psychographic attractiveness, but maybe not enough of the numbers
and time spent, right?
And
hours
time spent, all that stuff. Because you're right, ratings don't matter until there's not enough of them.
I would say I don't disagree with what you're saying, Howard. It being different is not always what you need to be correctly different. You need to be,
because a lot of people are just different for the sake of being different.
Yeah, no, I don't believe in that. No, I don't believe in that. I'm a blues fan, and I don't think ever, maybe in the South where I used to live, but in Toronto, you probably couldn't live for more than 3 or 4 weeks if you were trying to sell strictly blues and 4 hours of blues, because there's not enough people in Toronto who enjoy the blues. But we had, the funny thing is that a lot of what we played, the Durans and all of those people, they became huge market-wise. They weren't just some underground thing, Iggy Pop wasn't some underground thing. He was a big star. When they did Police Picnic, they sold 30 or 40,000 tickets. So he had a huge following. What we left out were the big hits of that day, i.e. Madonna is what I can think of, because it was being played 2 or 3 times an hour on the other stations. And would it work today in 2012? What 2022?
I'm not sure what decade it is either.
By the end of this episode, it'll be 2023.
It'll be 2032.
I don't know if it would work. I will say this: nythespirit.com plays a lot of new music that's being ignored by others. It also plays a lot of the music from the CFNY era. Some of the DJs, Ivor Hamilton, it does show All Night Andre, who was originally with NY in the Little Yellow House. And Scott, all these people. So would it work today? Well, it's working pretty well, okay, for nythespirit.com. I will say that. In fact, I may say this. What was CFNY is now nythespirit.com. Thank you for I hope you didn't mind the commercial.
No, listen, happy to promote that wonderful independent streaming station you have. People should check it out. But really, because I want to get us to the 90s here, and I want to get us to Humble and Fred before Humble goes to bed here. So I'm hoping maybe someone...
Any minute now, Mike.
Hang in there, Howard. We almost have you coming from Montreal. But I just want to know if I say this name, I want to know if anybody, what people think about it. If I say the name Larry Bates, does that name mean anything to anybody on this Zoom?
To me. Yeah.
Yes, I
I
know.
know him as Master.
Oh, please.
Does anyone know the story that can tell it better?
Well, go ahead.
Phil.
Larry Bates.
Didn't he intervene?
Yeah. Yes, and he said, "Stop! Oh, this is before your time, Howard. It stopped the agony."
Yes. No,
Stop
but I know
the
who he
agony
is.
of
I know the story.
Repeats. Yeah. And Larry formed a group of people who lobbied the CRTC to get us to go back to alternative. And he showed up at the Canada Day Festival with a group of people with signs, and he rented an airplane saying, "Stop the agony," and basically go back to what you were doing.
Was that a shot at Steve?
It was Steve and the music repeats, because we were doing, they were up to like, I don't know, 20 times a week by that point. So he didn't like the repeats, and he didn't like the shift in music philosophy. He was a steel worker, an iron worker, and it became his cause and his passion to get us. Now, I'm going to just add one more thing.
Go ahead.
Sorry, the springback under the McLean Hunter team was significantly more spring back to an eclectic sort of college style than a commercial alternative station.
I was going to
So
say,
it went a long way.
If he had been around nowadays, Larry would have parked an 18-wheeler outside of the station on Kennedy Road.
Yeah, the Larry thing.
Go ahead,
the Larry thing irked me a bit, because it's like, you're screwing with some people's lives here. No matter which side you fell on, it was like, well, easy for you to tell this radio station what to do, but you don't know the real story. You don't know the bottom line. You don't know what it needs to do to be viable. Yeah, I remember those. Yeah,
Alan, what did you think of the Bates intervention?
I was one of the insurrectionists. So I was quite happy when anybody took the side of some of us who were on the air, which, looking back, was not the smartest thing to do from a PR and toxic workplace point of view. But I thought Larry was kind of cool. I really was shocked by his passion for the whole thing.
Yeah.
And when I found out he died about 3 years ago, I hadn't thought about him for a while, but it moved me, because this was a guy who really went to the wall for the radio station, or at least as a representative of the radio, of a subset, the most passionate subset of the station's listeners.
And he spent his own money on it, and he was a listener.
Yeah.
I went to the CRTC hearing that he showed up at with a bunch of listeners, and he was very, very vocal. And it got to the point where Doug Pringle just didn't know what to say. Like, he just, Larry was like, "I want my radio station back." And I remember I was standing in the corner, but Pringle knew that I was, very much on.
Well, I think that makes Danny's point of a few minutes ago. Like, really, what a unique, like I've worked in radio stations all across the country, Ivar. And again, as I've said a bunch of times, I had no appreciation in 1989 for what the place was. But, looking back now, 30 years later, there really isn't very many places in media in general, forget radio, where people have felt that passionate about, about something so passionate that they would, as you said, spend their own money, go to the wall for it, go to hearings. Because a lot of people, nowadays it would just be a bunch of people tweeting at the station.
That's right. That's right.
To that point too, I'm just going to jump in very quickly.
Well, I
and
was
say,
going to ask for you, actually. I'm glad you're jumping in here.
Well, what you said about how passionate people were about it, and how you didn't realize, Howard, at the time, and in hindsight you discovered. I think all of us who are still working in some capacity on air or with the public can say, and without fail, that I hear still pretty much every single day, if not several times a week, from listeners who say, "Oh, I used to listen to you on CFNY. I've worked at other stations since then. I worked at Chum, and some people will say that to me from Chum as well, but not like they do when they talk about, man, I used to listen to you on CFN." It's just the way they say it. and the love that's still there for that station all these years later.
Yeah,
you
I
know?
agree.
If I can chime in, working there today, I still get blown away by the amount of texts we get every week, mentioning, like, I've been listening since Pete and Geets. I loved Humble and Fred, talking about David, Scott. Like, we get these texts every single week, many times. And the fact that, like, the music has changed so much, the Edge is totally different than it was back then, but the goodwill is still so strong there, for what you guys did. And it's mind-blowing, considering, like, how much time has passed and how much passion I still see every day there from the listeners of the past that are sticking with the Edge because of what happened before.
Okay, so I want to bring Humble to Toronto here, but Fred, before I get Humble here to join you, just a little cleanup here. So morning show CFNY. Just a moment, speak to Pete and Geets, where you and Mike Stafford were on Pete and Geets, and then what happened to Pete and Geets before Howard comes over to form Humble and Fred.
Well, as I said, I was, a couple of years out of college, and all of a sudden I'm working with Pete and Geets, and I knew who they were at Chum FM. In fact, I couldn't believe it. In fact, I think I read it in the newspaper they were coming to CFNY while I was working at CFNY, one with Gary Dunford or something. Right. And then all of a sudden I'm working with these two guys, and I was in the same room with, like, just a great morning show, a great major market morning show. Obviously I learned a lot, and Pete, a lot like Howard, really knew how to use the people around him, and it was just a lot of fun working with those guys for 7 years. I guess they left in 87. And and again, it was a collective thing, because Marsden, David used to call me and Stafford into his office and say, "Don't be afraid. Take chances. Don't be like the other stations." And that was pretty heady stuff for a 22. Like, I was 22. Stafford was like 19. And we have the program director, and then the radio station goes on the CN Tower, and we have the program director telling us to do things that I know weren't being told to other people at other stations. They just weren't.
Hey, Freddie,
if you make a mistake, don't worry. There's always tomorrow, and all that stuff that Marsden
Fred,
used
let me
to
just
say.
jump in and say, Fred, that was not what was said to us years later. Don't be,
Yeah, right.
be afraid.
What was
Shut your
the song?
Stop talking.
But, seriously, as a sportscaster, I mean, that influence of Pete and Geets, but David, of saying, do whatever you want, like, have fun. Yeah, you're a sportscaster, but be a different kind of sportscaster. And it was invaluable. I mean, that's probably why I stayed in the business for
Fred,
as long as I did.
In private conversations, I've heard you say, you love David Marsden. Like, tell
Yes, I
David
do.
you love him, Fred.
I've told David I love him. Seriously,
right,
for all
Uncle,
those
just
conversations,
relax.
he used to tell, again, not a lot of guys my age at that point in your career would be told the things that David told me and Mike Stafford to do.
So true.
The freedom, push the envelope.
Fred, one of my favorite stories that Fred tells about David Marsden.
Yeah.
Beside that one, which is, I always think, whenever you tell me that story, I think, God damn it, why couldn't Marsden have been our boss? But one of the things that always impressed me is that David had an appreciation, and I know a lot of the people on this call have done mornings or filled in on mornings. David always seemed to have an appreciation for what doing mornings was like. And there's a story, you should tell it, about David saying to you guys, take some time off, take time away.
Oh, that was absolutely. This is another Marsden. This is another reason I love the guy. He called me and Stafford in and said, how much holidays do you guys get? And we said 2 weeks. And you said, well, I want you to start taking 4. And we looked at each other and said, what's He said, a good morning show is a well-rested morning show. Try and take a week off every quarter. That's what he said to us. So we went from 2 weeks, which we were eligible for, to 4 weeks. And that's a true story. And it was like Stafford and I are looking at each other going, did he just double our holidays for?
No, it's crazy because David, most program directors are like, how much holidays do you guys get? Well, cut that in half.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because we weren't anywhere eligible for 4 at the time, but I think Pete and Geets came in with 4, and I'll never forget that, because it was just so progressive and thinking ahead. Of course, you get up at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. Of course, a well-rested morning show is a productive morning show. It all made sense. So
Freddie, I want to come off something you just said there about the ability to do what you want, right? You had the ability to do that on air.
Yes.
One thing I learned in the background on the creative side is that we could do that as well. And I think that was ingrained in the way the station sounded. We could just do whatever we wanted, make it go out. I mean, I remember Jamie Watson standing over my shoulder, and his whole thing was, don't worry about it. You can't break it. Just put it out there, see what happens.
Yeah.
What's the worst that's going to happen, right? Someone's going to call and say it's stupid. So what? Who cares? So I think, it's not just the ability to be on the front end.
Yes.
On the front facing end. It's the ability on the back side to actually take that idea and that imaging through promotions and through everything and push it forward.
Look at the creative that station had traditionally, year after year, person after person. Like, it was amazing. Like the creative department, like under Maureen Bully, and then after.
There's a lot of us here tonight, and it's so great to see everybody's faces, and so everyone's so cheery and happy. But there were so many people behind us. We had a news department of 9 or 10 people.
I know, it was crazy.
One radio station that does music had a radio station had 10 or 12 people. We had an incredible writing department headed by Maureen Bully, and on it goes. It was
wow.
It was the whole team that brought it together.
You also had Norm as your voice guy. You had sounds like that, just these voices.
Hey, Rob, I'm just thinking, Jay Brody heard you say you had 9 people in the newsroom. There's not 9 people working in 3 fucking rooms.
No.
9 people?
I haven't seen 9 people since I started at the end.
That's right.
No.
But there's not 9 people working in 3 corporations.
I'm not exaggerating. And then
no, dude. When I started, there were 9 people in the newsroom.
Yeah, but David, wasn't that was like spoken word commitment, right? A lot of it
was spoken. Well,
foreground programming.
Foreground or whatever.
We had 2 difficult absolute things that we had to do for the CRTC. One was 6 hours of class. Oh, you want to say something?
No, actually, I'm counting down with you these things.
Oh.
Sorry. Very confusing.
Okay. So we had 6 hours of classical music that we had to play every week. And I created with David Height, who I believe is a Dr. David Height now. And we created masters and moderns. And what we would do is we would play the classical music, but then we would compare it to people like the Moody Blues and other assorted bands like that.
Right.
We had a lot of hours of foreground programming. Most of that took place between 11 and midnight. You had the Streets of Ontario on the weekends with Liz, and we had a lot of we had PQ Special, which people at Civitas couldn't get over that. They thought I completely lost my mind because they were from Quebec.
Was that Eddie Valaquette's show?
That was Eddie's show.
Where's Eddie these days? Do you even know?
Nobody knows.
No idea. I spoke to him once.
Headley.
He called me from when I was in Vancouver once, Fred, and I've not heard from him since.
Oh, yeah.
Headley did the reggae. Brad did Eclectic Spirit. So all these foreground shows that most stations are just cringe. We just took this horrible idea and made it into something interesting.
Can I just jump in? One element you didn't capture, David, is that you had a certain amount of Peel region coverage you had to do too. So when I lived when I lived in Toronto and listened to in Toronto and listened to CFNY, it sounded like the most dangerous place on earth because every headline was Peel Regional Police have a 22-year-old man in custody. And that's how Mike would open all the newscasts.
Okay. Sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead. Liz,
I just wanted to throw in another restriction that worked to our advantage was that catch us if you can.
Yeah.
We had a law that said we couldn't play a song more than once a day.
That's right.
Right.
Which
Quick
is a
housekeeping
bizarre
notes, very
rule,
quick,
but-
and then we're going to get humble to Toronto. I promise. That's my tease. But Brother Bill wanted to be here. Brother Bill had to work, so he had to actually, work for a living here, so he couldn't join us. But shout out to Brother Bill, who very badly wanted to be here. Dani, you're on standby because I'm going to ask you about Reiner Schwartz, and then we have something to discuss. But Fred, before we bring Howard to Toronto, what were the morning shows between Pete and Geets and Humble and Fred?
One thing I will say about Pete and Geets, were they not probably the first sort of irreverent, fun FM morning show in Canada? FM, I'm talking about.
I would agree.
Absolutely.
And I don't know your ties to that Canadian Music Week and all that. Why those guys have not been recognized? To
I
me,
don't
it's a crime. You know why? Because a lot of the guys that are making the decisions don't even, they didn't listen to CFNY, I guess, or no early Chum FM, but they deserve a little recognition on some level, I would think.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree.
That's worth bringing up, Fred.
Pardon me?
I think it's worth trying to lobby,
I talked to that Neil Dixon about it one day, but he just wasn't really even looking at me when I was making the
How
pitch.
many years ago was that, Fred, if I may ask?
Well, probably 8 or 9 years ago. I wanted to say me and Howard should, but I thought that was a little
Fred
too.
gave up on Pete and Gates, and then we started trying to get us in. That was completely a shit show.
Fred, would you like me to intervene here? Would you like me to talk to this gentleman?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I must tell you, I got mine in 2011, and I think I was the first DJ because it was always managers and sales managers. It was,
okay.
And
David, did I not host that? Was I not hosting that night that you were? Were you not inducted at the same time as Derringer?
No.
Oh, okay, because I hosted a couple of those in the
I was,
early 2010s and 11.
It says March 14th, 2011 on my bill thing here.
Okay.
Okay, Fred, tell me, morning shows between Pete and Geets and Humble and Fred.
Okay, so Pete and Geets left, and then for a short period of time after Pete and Geets, I think James Scot did it just for a short period of time, and then I worked with Scot and Maie, and I don't know if that was before or after Randy Taylor.
I think it was after Randy Taylor.
Was it after Randy Taylor, Maie and Scot? Was it Maie and Scot?
Yes, I believe so, because I think that right after Scott and I, then it was Humble that came in. Oh,
Or
no,
was
Steve Anthony.
No.
Steve Anthony's in
there.
Yeah,
Ted Wallachin.
No, I never worked with Ted as a morning
Wallachin,
show guy.
too.
And that was
Wasn't
before.
no
yeah, that
wasn't
before that.
wasn't Maie Scott and Fred when Howard left?
I
Right.
think that was when I left in 91 to 92.
Oh,
when you
that's
guys-
right. That was
That was after I left.
It was Steve Anthony.
Okay, hold on.
Go ahead, Fred.
So it was Randy Taylor, and then I guess Steve Anthony.
No, it was Anthony, then Randy Taylor, because Randy Taylor was working with you when I arrived in town.
Oh, okay. All right, whatever. But and then Scott in May during the interim there when Howard left. Yeah.
Howard left. We'll get to that in a moment because I want to get to the Dani and then the Reiner Schwartz, and then we got Howard leaving, and then we got Dani doing something exciting on the air. But how the hell did you end up at CFNY, Humble Howard Glassman?
Well, thank you, Mike. And listen, it's great to see everyone. I don't know. I was going to say I don't know Leslie very. I don't know that we've ever met, and Liz. I don't know. Maybe we've met, but I think everyone else I've met a few times. I haven't seen Dani in a long time. It's interesting though. Dani looks younger than she did when she worked there 30 years ago, which is weird. Well, first of all, I know Pete and Geets were sort of the first irreverent morning show, but the guy that hired me in Vancouver, I guess, was a Pete and Geets fan, Don Schaefer, and he put me on a morning show. And we were supposed to be sort of like the funny, I was a stand-up comic, and I got put together with a couple other radio guys. And anyway, fast forward to 1989. I had been out of radio. I'd only been back in the business for a year. Some people that I had worked for before and worked with were trying to put together a morning show. Everyone knows the Humble and Fred origin story. Came to Montreal. We got along and started working. But what I kind of thought would be germane to this call is, what impressions I had of the station when I first arrived. And I've already said that I had no appreciation for the history, David, and others, and Scott and Ivar. I really didn't understand it. And I think I said this to Mike earlier today. Like I just thought it was chaos because it wasn't what it was, and it wasn't what it was going to become. It was this weird amoeba in the middle, and it was a bunch of, to Alan's point, a bunch of insurrectionists. I thought people were just. It was madness to me, and I didn't know where I fit into it. I had just been a traditional radio morning guy and had done pretty well, and I was a medium successful stand-up comic, and I was now thrown into this group of people that all knew each other, and I didn't know anybody and didn't know Fred. And I mean, like a lot of things, it's easy to see, hey, it worked out now, but at the time it was pretty unsettling for me. I had just met this woman that was going to become my wife and moved to a new city, and my impression of the station was almost immediately, what am I doing here? Like, because it was still, I think we were still playing top 40 and we were playing some alternative. And I remember there was a meeting, the chicken meeting at the place. Saint Hubert. And I remember at the end of the chicken meeting, there was the people like Scot and Alan and Neil Mann and all these people. And they were all happy that we were going back to alternative or something. And I just remember Neil Mann walking up to me and shaking his fist going, you can take your top 40 format and shove it up your fucking ass. And I'm like, I just want to do jokes. I'm just here for jokes, fellas.
You know what's funny, Howard, is that I started interning right about the time you guys started. Okay, so I came in right about the same time, and I was just an intern, and I grew up in Toronto, but I knew the stage, but I wasn't like an evangelist for it, right? So I came in, and it was the same thing. Whenever I'd be there, I'm like, this is like WKRP. This is a bizarre place. There is some weird shit.
But who was Reiner the program director then when you came, Howard? Dani Kingsbury, but that was on
Kingsbury, Fonger, and Mr. You guys were talking about Jim Hutton.
He was Bill Hutton.
Bill Hutton, sorry.
Right.
Jim Fonger.
Jim Fonger, yeah.
And I would just like to say too, because I know a lot of you worked with me in those days and we haven't kept in touch, but I can tell you this. A lot of the impressions of me were made at a time when it was very unsettling to me. I'd never been around anything like it. And again, my perspective obviously has changed over time. So I was thrown into this situation with this guy, Fred Patterson, who, by the way, was really funny, who I smoked cigarettes at the time, like everyone. It was 1989. You had to smoke cigarettes. It was the law. But Fred didn't smoke cigarettes, but we were so excited / nervous that I got him smoking like within a few days, because I was smoking so much, he just couldn't help himself. He's like, all right, well, fuck it, I guess we're all smoking. And in those days, which drove Geets crazy, we could smoke in the studio.
Oh, yeah. People are stupid.
So, Howard.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, you're mid-sentence there. Very rude.
No, that's fine. I'm just going to say, I just remember that time now. It was, again, unsettling and bizarre to me.
Yeah.
Is that why you quit?
And that is why, when I'm glad you asked that. I left the radio station because I loved the show, and I loved working with Fred and everyone around the show. But I remember Reiner became my boss. And you said something about an hour ago, David. I wanted to interrupt you, but you were saying you were talking about the call letters, CFNY. And I thought, that's so great, because you actually wanted people to say the call letters. Because I remember being in a meeting with Reiner, and nothing against Reiner, may he rest in peace. But I remember him saying, hey, I got an idea. We'll be the station that doesn't say the call letters. And I'm like, where the fuck am I? I'm like, I was a morning guy at the Fox when I was 21. What am I doing here? So I said to my now ex-wife, I said, I don't think I can work there, because I don't know that it's going to be where I want to go with my career, which is why I left. And I didn't want to leave the show.
Howard. They'll just know. They'll just know.
Yeah, they'll just know. That's what Reiner said. He said a lot of bizarre things.
I think Howard got caught in a huge transitional time, not only for the station, but radio. It was, FM radio was just peaking, and the money that was coming in, so it was becoming slowly corporate. And there was this time of transition to try to, how do we continue to be, creative radio from the past, but also be a corporate entity. Yeah, it was a difficult time.
Sure, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just on that smoking thing, just so you guys know, I still live in Brampton. I'm still in Heart Lake, 40 years. The odd time I go down, remember Jai, the guy that sold the rice in beside the Caribbean thing?
So good.
Well, the odd time I still get it. And if you walk up the stairs and into the station, it's all immigration lawyers now in driving schools, but they didn't, their offices are the actual studios. They didn't change a thing.
Wow.
Really?
I'm telling you the truth. One day I went in, and an immigration lawyer was like the main FM studio, and I push open the door and I look in where Pete and Geets and me and Howard would have sat, and it's like filing cabinets and a woman working in there. And I went in and I said hi to her, and I looked up at the ceiling, nicotine all over the ceiling. Still from Peter Griffin and Humble Howard and all the morning men that smoked. So, I'm telling you, nothing has changed. Even the old AM station is still there, and the studios are used for offices.
Wow.
I couldn't stop.
Still have the floors still rised and
Wow.
Yeah.
The day we left in '96, you could walk into that control room and still smell the staleness of the cigarettes.
Can I just jump in on the floors? We had a music department assistant who rolled a chair across the floor, hit an outlet, and put the whole station off the air.
Yeah. Hey, so
remember too that you couldn't have the microwave and the coffee
That's right.
and the coffee machine going at the same time, or you go off the air, and there was a memo to say that.
Oh, except on Mondays after Headley worked over the weekend, because you come in Monday morning and the microwave would be gone.
Hey, two quick Peter Griffin stories. Number one, he'd be on Geets about the equipment all the time, and Geets would often ignore him. And he complained about this chair one day, or over a period of days, a week or so. And one morning, me and Stafford are sitting there, and we hear wham, bang. He opened the studio door, grabbed the chair, and thrown it down the hall.
Wow.
Right down the hall. And Pete had a bit of a temper on him. And another day, he'd have, the microphone would be in front of his mouth, but the gooseneck thing, or whatever you call the spring that held it up, started to wear out, and the microphone would drop every so often. So one morning, mid-break, Pete just started punching it on the air. Bang, bang. Yeah, it was crazy.
Dan wants the default report that says, "Can someone please take a look at the control room chair because the seat smells?"
Yeah. True story. That's a true story. I remember
absolutely. Doesn't surprise me at all.
Fault reports. I forgot.
How do you know? How do you know that the seat smells?
Yeah, how do you know?
that was Dan.
Dan's a chair sniffer from way back.
All right, holy shit. As a guy, the only one on the Zoom who wasn't there, I got to say, I'm absolutely loving this, and I almost feel guilty because it's going long, but episode 1000 was 5 hours and 40 minutes, so maybe this...
Well, I hope this isn't, because I won't be here.
No, this won't be that long.
Mike, I
What
am going
kind
to
of a
say,
Zoom plan do you have?
Mike, I am going to say thank you, and I'm going to get off to do a little.
If you got to go, can you tell us why you came back? So you go to CKFM. You're the first man to say Mix 99.9 on.
Quickly, I go to CKFM. Slate hires me for the first of 3 times, and I start there August of 91. On Labor Day, after Labor Day, that Monday, I say Mix 99.9 for the first time, and that was 1991. I was back on the air with Fred by August, I want to say August of 1992.
Yeah.
So other than that, and so those are the reasons I left. The reason I came back is sitting right there. I knew that the show that I was doing with Fred was the best show for me,
right?
And that staying where I was, because Gary didn't fire me, although he says he did, but that was one of the times he didn't fire me. The other 2 times he did. And by the way, Maie, the last time he fired me was 4 months before he sold the company to Astrell, and I remember saying to him after, "What the fuck, Slate? Like, really? I was the thing holding up the sale?
Right?
Shitty little salary?"
Well,
So
Howard,
I
thanks
came
for
back
jumping
to
on.
work-
Go ahead.
I
Yeah.
came back to work with Fred.
Beautiful.
And it's worked out pretty well. And I'm being honest. Like, I just recognized that was the best radio I had done. And that, there's a secondary reason. And you guys may not like these people, but I recognize that Vince DiMaggio and Stu Myers I had known them from radio. So my insecurity around the station as it was when I arrived at the first time was quelled by the fact that I knew those 2 guys in charge how to do a radio station, how to do radio.
Right.
And so I came back. I remember the first meeting. They said, "Did you leave?" They were talking to me about why I left, and I said I left for those reasons. And I said, "But I always loved working with Fred." And they said, "Would you like to work with him again?" I said, "Absolutely." And that's how I came back. And it was August of 1992. I guess we went back on the air.
Amazing.
And tomorrow morning we'll be back doing it again. 34 years or 33 years after we started. So thank you.
I will see you there, Howard. Thanks so much for jumping on the Zoom.
Before you go,
everybody.
Hey,
Howard,
Robbie
before-
J wants to say something to you before you hang up.
Before you
Hi,
go,
Rob.
Hi, Howard. How are you, brother?
I'm great, man.
I just want to say the times that I did fill in for Danger doing the show for you guys was a freaking blast. I learned so much things. And the funniest thing was, I remember sometimes I would screw up during the show. I'd make a mistake or something. You get pretty mad during the show. You're like, when you go off. Yeah, one time. Yeah, it was weird. It was the weirdest thing. Bob would never experience this.
Oh, no.
But afterwards, you would say, hey man, sorry about that. It's cool. I just want to make sure everything's cool. And I learned so much. It was an absolute fantastic experience. And if I've never expressed that, there you go.
Well, thank you, Rob. I just want to say I don't care as much as I once did.
Well, I know that now.
Just close to death. Anyway, thanks everyone. Stay well. See you tomorrow, Freddie.
Okay, talk to you in a few hours. Further, I mentioned Stuart Myers and Vince DiMaggio and that regime. Some liked them, some didn't. I liked them. So he comes back in 92. In 93, Howard and I received a really nice offer from Q107 to go do the morning show there, and we were free and clear to go at the time. But through negotiations, at the end of the day, it was, no, we want to stay working with these guys, the guys we know, as opposed to the guys we don't know.
Amazing.
And that was 93. I wish we'd have done that in 2003, but we didn't. We made the wrong move at that time, but it was the right move in 93.
I'd like to just shine a light on Dani Elwell here. Hello, Dani. How you doing?
Hey.
Could you speak? We heard his name earlier, talking about not saying the call letters, Reiner Schwartz. But could you please speak just briefly about Reiner Schwartz's time here at this kind of transition period of CFNY? And then I need you to speak to the fact that you resigned from CFNY on the air, and we need to know why you did that. So there's a bunch of stuff on the plate for Dani Elwell.
And I'm going to invite Scot and Alan and Maie and Phil to speak to this time period too, because I don't know all certainly. And when I met Reiner, I met him at CKFM 99.9. He and I became friends. He was doing a bunch of things there and soon told me that he was leaving and going to CFNY. You mentioned Larry Bates. And I remember, knowing Reiner a little bit and not really knowing what he was up to, I remember him telling me about, collaborating with Larry on some things in regards to CFNY. And soon after he landed there. And I got hired 89, hired to do evenings. And I loved it. I don't remember things like him saying, you can't say the call letters or do this or do that. To be truthful, the thing that I enjoyed most about Reiner is that he allowed you to be who you are. And for me at that time, that was everything.
He was a very sensitive and empathetic person towards, especially the announcers. He really felt, I think, a kinship with us and did want us to be creative and be ourselves. And I didn't know Reiner before. So Reiner Schwartz was a name I knew, but I didn't know him at all. So it was an interesting opportunity that I had to work with him. Unfortunately, part of my time working with him was cut short because I went off to have a baby. But I do remember him also being so great because the night of the Casbys was, I think I was really, 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 really pregnant. There's a funny picture of Scott Turner and myself from the 89 Casbys. We look like Laurel and Hardy standing there together, by the way, because Scott's so slim and I was like out there. And I remember Reiner saying, "Are you sure you could do this? a limousine on standby to take you to the hospital. He was, just a really sweet, empathetic guy. And yes, greatly missed, I'm sure, by many. I unfortunately only had a very short period of time to work with him.
I remember when Reiner came along, the music policy snapped 180 degrees from where it had been in the previous 2 years. And I remember hearing, Ministry on the morning show thinking, okay, I like this, but this isn't going to last. It's just not going to work. And I remember we had pretty free reign. And this is, I guess, what is it? Is this 91? 91?
Or earlier than that, 90, 89?
89.
And Earl Jive was the music director.
That's right. And we were just on the cusp of the whole alternative revolution of the 1990s. So you could feel that something was shifting with music, but we hadn't reached grunge, or 91, which was a big year where every single day a new record came out that was perfect for our format and helped us establish ourselves for the entire decade. The one thing I do remember about Reiner is that he got very angry with me, or at least he got angry with me because I had done a bit on the air talking about how elephants who had been released from logging camps were now roaming the streets of Bangkok because they had nothing better to do. So these poor unemployed laborers were roaming the streets of Bangkok. And I said, we have the same thing here too, except we call them newfies.
Whoa.
So Reiner calls me in and accuses me of racism. And I said, well, Reiner, how many complaints did you get? He goes, none. Okay, so what's the problem? Well, I just don't think we should be doing that. Okay, we won't do it anymore. How many complaints did you get? None. How many complaints did he ever get? None.
Right.
But okay, I never equated unemployed Thai logging elephants with people from the Maritimes ever again.
But that's funny. You couldn't say newfies on the air now.
No.
No way.
I have a story I'd like to
Couldn't say
tell
Bangkok
about-
either. So
Couldn't do probably half of what Geets did on the air now.
That's true.
David, you were going to say something there?
Yeah, I just, Reiner, when I was at Shulman, Montreal, and I was hired by Chum FM, I moved to Chum FM, and Reiner left Chum FM and went to Montreal at Shulman FM. And he and I had that sort of thing going on for the longest time. Even follow, the whole thing with CFNY, I was gone and Reiner came in, and we got to know each other pretty well near his ending years. And when I had Iceberg, he did some voice work for me at Iceberg, and he and I used to really chat up in my office a lot. And we had a pretty good time because I think we both see the world somewhat oddly. I also wanted to mention, if I may,
sure.
I want to mention the on-air staff that we had. Many of us are here today, but then we have people like someone mentioned Earl Jive a few minutes ago, and Earl Jive and Beverly was hugely popular.
Yeah.
I mean, they did so much club work; it was just crazy. And Earl drove around in Geddy Lee's Porsche, and that didn't quite do it, so he went and bought a brand new one. So they were doing well. Also, Jim Reed, who did middays at CFNY for years, a great guy and a wonderful announcer. Nick Charles, of course, was fill in, and when he wasn't on CFNY, he was chauffeuring all the stars around. David Bowie, Iggy Pop, that's what he did. Also, All Night Andre, of course, his very early years at CFNY. And who did I leave out? Brad McNally.
Ron Rochelle. Whatever happened with Ron Rochelle?
Yes, thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah.
I do not know. I see his former wife, I think, posting on Facebook sometimes.
Wendy.
Yeah.
That's right. I see Wendy posting on Facebook. I do not know. He just disappeared, as some others have done. And of course, also the people who did a lot of the specials, Skip Prokop, for example, did the Gospel Hour. for a lot. Well, I don't know if I did it after I left. I just don't want those people to be left out.
Right.
because they-
Well, Skip Rokop came back as a salesman, and I got to know him pretty well because he lived here in Brampton. I spent some time with him. I was also Jim Reed. I went to his 60th birthday party.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. And a few times over the years, he's popped in. He lives where he goes to work at some produce company, was close to the Humble and Fred studio when we were in South Etobicoke, and he would drop in the odd morning. So I've kept in touch with him.
Oh, we had Daddy Cool. Remember
Yeah.
Daddy Cool?
Oh yeah, Daddy Cool. He was cool.
There was,
I just ran into him in Kitchener. He was he was in the audience with the Rolling Stones Unzipped exhibit.
he did Monday nights, 11 till midnight, and it was a rock and roll party, and he played a lot of the Daddy Cool music.
Oh, Jim Bauer.
Jim Bauer is another one. Jim and I still speak quite often. He does listen to NY the Spirit, so we have a connection there. And Jim was a very quiet, unassuming fellow, but a really nice and wonderful friend, and we still chat quite a lot.
No one has mentioned Chris Shepard yet.
I was going to get to that. I was going to get to that.
Okay, talk about Chris Shepard now, because I've been trying to find this guy for the last,
Well, let me
where
talk.
is he?
What are you
I'll tell
talking
you
about?
this.
That was 2014, Fred. Though that was 2014.
2014. Everybody's looking for Chris Shepard. I got his number from somebody one day, and I called and I said, Chris, it's Fred. Hey, Freddie, how you doing? I said, me and Howard are doing a podcast. Will you come in one morning and do it? No problem. And he came in and sat in with us for an hour and a half.
That was the last appearance, though,
Right.
Fred.
That's his last public appearance. Is Humble and Fred on 2014.
Really?
Chris, I tell you about Chris. I tell you how I found him. I was doing Saturday nights, and it was just too much for me. And so I went around to all the clubs in the city and listened to the club DJs, because I thought there was a spot there for a club DJ to dance. And I went to all the clubs, and I listened to probably 7 or 8 different DJs. And the guy that I thought was great was Chris, and Leslie will probably know about this. I invited him to come in, and we had a meeting, and he just did. I offered him the Saturday night show, and I'll never forget what he said to me. And if you know Chris, his voice is very sublime. He said, David, I don't know anything about radio. I said, neither do I. It's okay. But Chris Shepard, he took that and he literally owned it. It made his career, but he doesn't do much public anymore. He's really laid back. I saw him one day on Yonge Street, and he had the Mickey Mouse hair, the buns at the back of his head, and he and I chatted quite a while.
So he's in Toronto. He's in Toronto.
Yes, he is in Toronto. I believe he lives in. I believe he lives in North York.
These are leads, right? You're writing this down, Scott? We got to find this guy.
Well, the pigtail thing, that was part. That's the way his hair was in that the video, right, with the band that he was in. What was that?
Yeah,
Love Inc. Right.
Yeah.
Love Inc. Yes. Yeah.
But when he came in with us, I don't know. You should listen to the show because he came in with like a bunch of a paper with written notes. He's very spiritual.
We're going to pause this because Dani's got a jet, but I just need to ask her a specific question here. Dani, why did you quit in 1992?
Mike, it's on your other Toronto Mike podcast.
I thought you might say that.
Your other, nah, it's all there, and no regrets, and I loved it, and it's. I'm so grateful for this time in my life. And I'm grateful for all of you, and I'm happy to have all of your stories and to see your lovely faces.
Well, thank you for this. I thank you so much. And I promise everyone else this won't take another. I'm going to go quickly to wrap all this up. There's still some points I want to hit. But Dani, thanks for your time today. I really appreciate this. And yes, if you go to Dani's appearance on Toronto Mike, she tells in all that great detail why she resigned from the station on the air. You read your resume live on the air, and that's a unique way to do it.
It was before LinkedIn. It's the way to do it.
Dani, I remember the chaos the next day. I remember the chaos the next day. That was fun.
I'm sorry.
I was down at the boombox at the CNE and people are coming up. What happened to Dani? What did you do? I have no idea what's going on.
I know what the problem was. She wouldn't play Pour Some Sugar on Me.
That's about right. So thank you, Dani. Alan, 1993, a little show called The Ongoing History of New Music debuts. You might know the producer, the technical producer of that program, but how did that come to be, and how is it that it still persists to this very day in a good way? I enjoy listening to that program.
Okay, I'll answer the second question first. I have no idea. The radio show breaks all kinds of rules. The host talks too much, plays a lot of unfamiliar music, and never mentions the call letter of the radio station within the body of the program.
It's the production.
So I don't know.
It's the production.
Oh, it's that. Oh, okay.
No, too much compression. Too much compression on that program, if I may.
But I'm working on episode number 954 now. So and Rob, how many downloads for the podcast?
We are 315 down shows, about 15 million streams and downloads.
That's one show a week, so that's not bad. Yeah. The way it worked was, again, we were in this transition time between being part of Selkirk, then we were in escrow with Rogers, then we were McLean Hunter, and then that's when Vince DiMaggio and Stu Myers came in 1992, and the idea was to clean up the radio station, get rid of some of the baggage, and turn it into something else, or something new. And for a while, we thought it was going to be a country station. We were sure the station was going to go in that direction, and we were all going to be fired. But then they looked around, did some research, and found out that, hey, there's these bands like U2 and Nirvana and the Tragically Hip and Soundgarden and Smashing Pumpkins and so on. Well, this is a big deal right now. So if we're going to ride a youth wave, an 18 to 34-year-old demo, we're going to stick with what we're doing, except we're going to do it in a more professional, less chaotic sort of way. But one of the things that we're going to have to do is give everybody, all these new listeners that we hope to attract, some context for the music that we're playing. So they looked around and they found one person on staff with a history degree, which was me. And I, at that time, was working Monday to Friday, 2 to 6. So it was the greatest shift in the world. And then they said to me, well, listen, we're changing things. You are going to do this 4-gram program called The Ongoing History of New Music. I go, that's a stupid name. God, doesn't matter. It's what we're going to call it. All right, fine. And honest to God. And they said, you're going to do it. And what do you think? And I said, well, you know what? I really kind of like my, working from 2 to 6, Monday to Friday. And they said, that's okay. If you don't take this job, which, by the way, well, if you don't take this job, we'll find a nice package for you, and best of luck in your future endeavors. At that point, I had just been married. Bill bought a house, so I had to do something. So what they ended up doing is they ended up severing me and hiring me back. I was no longer a full-time employee. They wanted to save on payroll taxes and benefits, so they fired me and immediately hired me back as a part-time contractor to do this Ongoing History of New Music show for 3 days a week. And then they paid me as a part-timer hourly, Saturday and Sunday from 6 a.m. to noon.
Yes, so, I remember that specifically because I remember I was doing the overnights off on the overnights, and you came in a couple of times and you were like, I got to do this stupid Ongoing History. This is a waste of time. Yeah. You were just like, this is the dumbest thing I'm ever going to. You were not in a good mood for a while.
For a very long time, because I didn't have a common day off with Mary Ellen. Somebody was always working for that period. And I thought, well, this is not how I want to start my married life. And I made some attempts to get out of find jobs elsewhere. Nobody would pay attention to me. So anyway, that eventually worked out after about 9 months, and they put me back on afternoons still as an independent contractor, but I had to continue doing this Ongoing History thing. So, okay, fine. If that's the condition of my employment, I'll do it. But around the same time, because they brought me back as an independent contractor, it allowed me to do other things with some of the intellectual property that I was acquiring. I basically turned, this situation with a big pile of lemons into some lemonade. And, here we are. Next year will be, next year's the 30th anniversary. And next year will be 1,000 shows.
The rest is ongoing history.
How the hell am I still doing this? I have no idea.
Wow. Okay.
Alan, if you do the 1,000 show, can you make it not 5 hours?
Yes, I promise.
Well, I mean, the funny thing is you got to remember when this show first started, Craig Venn did it initially for the first 110 episodes, and for the first 200 or so, it was all done in the foreground in the production studio, and it was all 2-track. So it was recorded 2-track, edited down, bounced over to the multi-track, bounced down again, bounce. It was an unbelievably long, laborious task, which can now be achieved in a matter of hours on a laptop, wherever you want to do it.
Bob Willette, are you still here?
Yeah.
Okay. What's it like for you joining this station? What is it, 97 when you show up?
Yeah.
So what is it like joining? Because, I mean, run down the lineup of the people when you join CFNY in 97. It's like Murderer's Row.
Yeah, I talked about this on my own podcast, and I actually had Captain Phil and Robbie J on, and a couple other people talking about. I was at CFNY for the very short, I think about 3-year stint of Edge 102. Wasn't 102.1 The Edge. It was Edge 102. Maie was on as well. We had Vishna on, Brother Bill. So when I got there as a Humble and Fred intern, walked in off the street and begged for a job. I was Humble and Fred in the morning, then Maie Pauts, then it was Alan Kross, Kim Hughes and George Strombolopoulos were doing live in Toronto. Brother Bill was doing evenings. Vishna was doing overnights live. Yeah. It was, for me, like that's my, I know all these spirit days, but for me, that's why that lineup is why I'm in radio still.
But you're Gen X, so yeah.
And Marty doing the club nights.
And then that was my first full-time, my first regular gig. Phil Evans hired me to be the on-site tech for Martin Streak's live to airs, Friday nights from the Kingdom in Burlington, Saturday nights from Club 102 at the Phoenix, and Sunday nights at Whiskey Saigon. And I was in there every night, and then during the week I'd go in and work with the Humble and Fred show. And that, like I said, that for me, that's the halcyon days for the radio station. I know we had literally thousands of people in the clubs every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night. The DJ at the time, it was post Paul Dingra, who, I mean, we didn't even get into the whole Chris Shepard, Paul Dingra, DJ Dwight days. It was right. The energy of the station then was a totally different thing. Edgefest 97, almost an entirely Canadian lineup. 25 years ago, by the way, also happens to be the first date my now wife and I had was Edgefest 97. And, it was just walking in there and getting to know, all these people who there was a time when if you had a party, you would put on the radio station, because it was commercial free on Friday and Saturday and Sunday nights between 10 and 2. So you would just throw it on, and Streak could be on there. And then I was just a massive Humble and Fred fan. And my wife, or my girlfriend at the time, had heard, hey, Chicken Shawarma is leaving. And again, we could talk about the Humble and Fred intern program. There's so many great radio people, but Shawarma was leaving to go work with Kim Hughes and Strombo on Live in Toronto. And they needed somebody to come in, and I was that guy. That was my lineup. That's my era. That Edge 102 era for me. And it's amazing how many people still refer to it as Edge 102, by the way.
Guilty as charged.
For how long it was 102.1 The Edge and all that. There's so many people our age, again, like you said, Gen Xers. I'm born in 76. There's so many people, Edge 102 and that Can Rock explosion, right? Mm-hmm. The Our Lady Pieces, the Tea Parties, the Moists, like all those, not to mention the Tragically Hip, who was already mentioned. That is what CFNY was, and in my brain still is.
Well, I think the interesting thing, Mike, before I forget, is I wanted to get Phil's take on this, because Phil would have been instrumental in all this back in '93 when it went from modern rock to the leading edge, to the edge, to that. And that was when Stu and Vince came in and they brought that whole thing in. And that was the turning point where it really went from, okay, now it has an identity from the spirit of radio, all those weird years. And now it was like, okay, now it's getting an identity with the edge. And it really had something to focus on, because it had all the music to focus on, right? It was like the halcyon days of this incredible music was coming up. And then you had an amazing lineup, as Bob said, with a lot of that talent on air at the time.
So Captain, can you just definitively here, how did the branding, how did it go? I remember Modern Rock because Alan Kross gave me a sticker at the boom box at the CNE in 1989, and I was working there that year. And I remember the sticker because it went on my boom box. Mine was smaller than yours, but it said Modern Rock. So can you walk down the branding here that brings us to 102.1 The Edge real quick?
Well, I think David implemented Modern Rock after the Spirit, didn't you?
Or
Dave?
was it Modern Music? Wasn't it?
Modern Music.
Yes, that's what it was.
Music. Music.
Okay, so what comes after Modern Music?
Modern Rock.
That's true.
Well, Liz would know this too because we kept changing the name of the talent search. Ontario Talent Search, Great Ontario Modern Music Search, Great Ontario Modern Rock Search, Modern Rock Search. And I think Liz was the gatekeeper for most of those early versions of that. Isn't that right, Liz?
Yeah, I think the album we released in '88, we called it Modern Rock.
Yes. Yeah, so Modern Rock then goes into when McLean Hunter takes over and Reiner is installed in the program director's position, we just become CFNY FM 102.1. Because strangely, like Howard said, not only were we the station that didn't say the call letters under Reiner, but we're also the station that didn't tell them what we were doing. Vince and Stu, who came in with the next round of ownership, who is it, guys? Whatever became Chorus, right?
McLean Hunter.
Yeah, McLean Hunter. McLean Hunter leaves
for a period of time.
Right. Okay, so the new guys, Vince and Stu, were from out west, and they acted like they were from out west, and they were cowboys, but they were fantastic. They were great at branding. They did incredible research. They did panels almost bi-weekly with listeners. And then I have it behind me. So then we go to CFNY 102.1, The Leading Edge, and that's a big launch for us because they tell us we're keeping CFNY 102.1 and we're keeping The Leading in there. But the whole idea was to evolve that logo and bring the audience along with us from CFNY to 102.1 The Edge, which is where it is today.
Why do I keep calling it? Right. Now, why do I keep calling it Edge 102? Go ahead.
Sorry, Fred.
I was going to say late 90s, some kids come in one day and talked whoever was in charge at the time to drop 102.1 The Edge and just go Edge 102. And I remember it was a head scratcher at the time. It's not that much of a difference. Right. But again, late 90s. So I guess
it was 96 or 97 because when I started, it was already Edge 102.
So they go back to 102.1.
What was the philosophy
behind that?
Yeah.
I'm going to say something here. I think it was the internet. I think we needed to be able to capture what we were saying on the air on a website.
Oh, okay.
And so there's another thing that ties in with that afterwards. They go back to 102.1 The Edge because the other one they found was too sanitized and too stereotypical of a brand. And they roughed it up and they went back to 102.1 The Edge.
Logo itself, you mean? They actually, they roughed the logo up. Yeah,
they roughed it up. So in between here, at this point, by the time we went back to 102.1 The Edge, I was the one responsible for registering domain names with my pal Earl Veal, and we'd gone through every iteration. So we finally just took edge.ca, which meant that whatever else they put around it, we'd always have edge.ca.
Smart. Okay, guys. So, by the way, fun fact, of course, is that Stu Myers, who we've spoke about quite a bit, Stu Myers' daughter is working with Jay. Are you still there, or did you go to bed?
Oh, he may be gone.
No, I'm here, guys. Sorry, guys.
Look at Jay and Fred are still awake and going. Look at you guys rock.
Hey, how's it going?
Jay, I just want to say thank you for hanging in there, man. I know, the thing about these things, you start them and you go chronological and you realize 2 hours deep, you haven't hit the 90s yet. So, what I'm hoping we can do right now before we speak to you, Jay, is could we remember I have a few names. I know so many great on-air personalities are no longer with us, sadly. And we did speak about James Baby Scott and we talked about Reiner Schwartz. But could we just take a moment and speak to let's start with Marsden Streak. Can anybody just share any thoughts on Marsden Streak, who passed away in 2009? So far too soon.
I will tell you that I was doing DJ at Andy Pool Hall, and at one Wednesday evening, I think it was, Martin came into Andy Pool Hall because there was a birthday party or something for him, and he came right up on the DJ stand and he gave me this big hug, and he whispered in my ear, and he said, "I've just been fired." I said, "You're kidding?" And he said, "No." And he said, "I've never been interviewed for a job by anybody but you." Because he stayed with it. He moved through all the format changes and everything and became a very, very important DJ. I said to him, "We'll have a drink. I'll try and help you as best I can." He said, "I'm going to LA for 2 weeks, and when I get back, we'll talk, and I need your help." He went back. He called me when he got back from LA, and he said, "David, how about we get together whatever day it was, 2 days later or something." And that day never came, because on the next day, he put on his wings and flew away. And it bothers me to this day. I wish I had said something that I didn't say, obviously.
Dave, same thing. And the time frame now, it's years ago. Brother Bill's stag. You were there, Rob, weren't you?
Yeah, me, you, Ivar,
Ivar.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're at Brother Bill's stag, and he had been fired, and I had been fired from the mix. Again, I'm forgetting the time frame, but I spent a lot of time talking to him. He was asking me about being fired, and the severance, because I know that they were trying to screw him over severance-wise, chorus, and I knew he was upset, but not that upset. And it's funny in retrospect too. That day I was talking to him, and I knew he was down, and it was obvious. But in retrospect, I wish at the time I'd have known that he was that dark. Because it's the same way. It's like if he'd just said something more, maybe I could have said something to change it. I mean, like, who knows? But that haunts me a bit too, because not long after that, he took his own life.
I know what you're saying, Fred. And whenever we talked on the phone 2 days before, I think I've lost you.
We can hear you.
We can hear you. Now he's gone.
David?
We can hear you, David. Can you hear us? Okay.
No. Well,
anyway,
before David comes back, I just wanted to throw something in here.
Yeah, the whole thing sucked. It was horrible.
Well, here's the thing I don't think a lot of people know. He was an amazing host of a party. Like,
I know. I've heard about the hot tub.
If you went to his place, he was like, everybody got his attention. He was always checking, make sure you got this, you got that, taking care of everybody. Like he was just the man, the gad about town. It was to have him outside of the element of radio, outside of the element of a club night, just like at his home, at his place. It was phenomenal. It was a bon vivant, if you will. Like just loved everything that was going on.
I had a different sort of experience with him because I went from being a coworker to be his boss. So when I got to be his boss, I got to see the demons that he was fighting in his life. And there were quite a few of them. I was told on at least 3 occasions to fire him by my bosses. And each time I refused, saying that, no, because if you fire him, that will be the end of Martin. He will be dead within 6 months. And that is not, yes. And that is not happening.
He lived and died that radio station.
He did.
I worked for 3 years in that booth with him, and you're spending 5 hours a night or more, like in very, very close quarters. I got to know him very well, and he really did define himself by the radio station.
Well, that's a demon in itself, really, when you think about it. It's sad, really. Yeah.
Good point, Fred.
We were trying together to figure out Martin, you're going to be, what was it, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46 years old. The Peter Pan Act is going to run out at some time.
Mm-hmm.
And while you're still doing great work and you're still legendary in the eyes of what's now 2 generations of club goers and radio people,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have to find something to do, because it's going to come a time when it's just not going to work. So I don't want you to end up on the street. So what are we going to do? So we worked at a variety of things, and he was more than welcome to continue doing the live to airs as long as he wanted. But we had to come up with some sort of future plan for his own good. And throughout that time, he surrendered or was beaten down by his demons a number of times. He didn't show up for work once, 3, 4 times, because he had succumbed to some addiction issues. There was one time twice I had to go pick him up from someplace because he had gotten in with the wrong crowd. And I convinced Kross to put him through detox at least twice, rehab at least twice.
Mm-hmm.
And when I moved on from being the program director to being to a different part of the company, I thought he was in a good place. I thought he was going to be able to carry on. I brought him in. He was part of the music department committee. He was doing, these special things on Friday nights out at on Polson Pier, and we had given him all kinds of extra autonomy doing what he was doing, and I thought he was going to be okay. I really did, but that's not the case.
Well, I remember, I guess, several years before that, when Howard was away, he actually hosted the morning show a couple of times, and me having the talk with him having those talks, like I want to do more. I want to be able to slide from what I'm doing into something else. And so I guess it was Stuart at the time let him host the morning show a couple of times. And I think he hosted a few shows on Mojo too, to dabble in that.
He did do some of that. And he did leave us with one of the all-time great memos in the history of the radio station. The time he went on air and told Pete Fowler, just go with this. And then he proceeded to yell "fuck" on air, which was one of the all-time greatest moments in the history of the radio station, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I think
For the memo, didn't he?
what you said a bit, Fred. I was just saying that his life had become like what nearly his entire life was connected, attached to the radio station, and that, as great as that can be, and that the history of the station, and he loved the stage. You can't live a life 100% attached to one thing, and it was just too much for him. I think there were other things at play, as Alan said, but it's dangerous, right?
The funny thing was too, he was just starting to do some.
Well, that sounds like
some feedback there.
Sounded like a toilet flushing.
To do some video stuff, right? And I think the interesting thing was, it was almost like a few years ahead of the time, right? If it had been 4 or 5 years later,
right?
You mean Backstage Pass? Is this with?
Just sort of getting into some of that
Ubiquitous
stuff.
Synergy Seeker. I saw an episode.
Yeah, some of that stuff, and I think it was just a little. It hadn't quite clicked yet, and if you gave it a couple more years, it would have just been. He would have just been like in that complete zone if he could have owned the video ownership of being.
Agreed.
Of doing stuff like that, right?
Yeah, he did great on camera and great in front of people. And I think there could have been clearly other chapters if he just could have navigated change. Like sometimes change is so hard for people, right?
I'm just going to jump in here and say that, I think it's easy to deconstruct all these things that happened around him. But what happened that day is that it was the one day that he was down and no one was there to bring him back up.
Right.
And the other days when you talked to him, Fred, when you talked to him, David, no one's fault. It was the day that no one was.
No, exactly. Compare that last week or the week before. Again, my mind, I'm 65 now. We had George Stroumboulopoulos on the show, and he says, looking back over his career, the one thing he wishes he'd have done more of was be at the edge, because like the rest of us, he fell in love with the radio station, and he hated to leave the radio station. And in retrospect, it's like, boy, I wish I'd have spent more time there. But he talked about change too, and he's got a great gig now. He's living in Los Angeles half of the year, and he's doing that Apple Music thing. And I think of that, and I think that could have been Marty.
Yeah.
That could have been Marty.
And that's what I mean.
He could have transitioned into those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It was a few years too soon.
Yeah.
And it's funny you say that about George, because I can't even tell you the number of times George has said to me, radio is his passion. It is his all-time love. And no matter what he can do, if there's a way he can keep doing it, he will keep doing it.
Yeah. But he said he was torn at the time he left the edge. He sort of had to, because, his conscience told him his career he had to do it, but he wishes now he hadn't.
If somebody comes up to you and says, "Hey, we want you to come do the new music," which was like the pinnacle of TV music shows.
Yeah.
What are you going to turn that down? No, I don't think so.
Wow. Is it true that Marsden Streak had a tattoo of the station's Spirit of Radio logo on his ass? Is that right?
I think it was on his leg.
Thigh on his leg, yeah.
I never looked, but I heard.
No, it was there.
Well, right. It's all so shitty. And one more.
And the funny part about Marty Streak, his brother Rob was actually around the station before Marty. He never became a radio guy.
Right. Yes.
But Rob was friends with Kevin O'Leary and a lot of the guys that produced the guy that produced the Pete and Geach show. And Rob hung out, and then Marty all of a sudden was around. So my first memories of Marty was this like teenage kid just bopping around.
I will say too, Fred, he did a terrific job on the roadshow over the years. He brought so much color to it and so much character. He was such an integral part of it. And, and he was always nice to me too. Like he was always like, he just said, I remember him saying to somebody, he goes, "Yeah, Ivar's my brother." And I never forget that, it was so great.
And we touched just for a second, Mike, and it's a whole other story we could talk more about. The connection, Chris Shepherd and Marty, but in some ways they were similar. And Chris, they were like, if you want to label it in such, I mean, you could say they were the two rock stars of the station. And Chris, in many ways, had that sort of persona and demons and all the stories and things. And then Marty kind of stepped into those shoes and took it to another level. Different, I don't want to ever compare the two, but there's some similarities there.
What they both had a gift for was with listeners and with people in the clubs, making them feel as they were like you mentioned privately about Martin in the home, but they would do that. They would make everybody feel so welcome. Martin, I know, was, and then Chris Shepherd too, but Martin, I do remember, at those live to airs, it was like, it was his party and he was the host and he walked around and he welcomed people and he talked to everyone. He made everyone in there feel somehow special. He had that gift.
And he never confined himself to the booth. You go to the Phoenix on a Saturday and he's in the parlor, he's in the main room, he's upstairs, he's here, he's there.
And look who's sitting there talking about making people feel good and being so friendly and sweet and wonderful. You know how often your name comes up when the CFI, oh, that Maie Pauts, I love Maie Pauts, I love, when I hear Maie Pauts on Boom. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I have words for each of you before we say goodbye.
Ready, by the way.
Poor Mike, you really opened a can of worms. We're here all night. I'm staying.
Yeah. I would do
some wine on here. We're here all night.
I'm worried about you guys. We've lost a couple, but I want to speak to one more fallen soldier before we speak to Jay Brody, and then I want to address you all individually.
Okay, this is the dead guy segment.
So one more fallen soldier. Yes, right.
Hold on, Mike. Do you have a sponsorship credit here you need to do?
Good one, Phil. Nice segue.
Ridley Funeral. There we go.
Shout out to Ridley Funeral Home. In all seriousness, who wants to speak about Dave Bookman? Bookie.
Oh, Bookie. Oh, yeah. There's a guy who I love the fact that he never became other than what he was the first day that he walked in. I did some live in Toronto with Scott Turner, and then Bookie came in as a contributor. Right, Scott? Was he a contributor with us when we were still hosting it?
I think it was after us.
But I do remember doing some live in Toronto's with Bookie, and he was who he was till the very end. That passionate guy about the music, and he never changed. I mean, he did get. I think that a lot of us at first were like, "Whoa, he doesn't have a radio." It's so typical of CFNY, embracing people for all the right reasons. He didn't have that radio background, so to speak, but he had the passion for the music, and he was willing to learn how to do the throws and the things that you have to do to sort of keep a show going. But he never stopped having the charm that he initially had from the beginning. Sometimes it was almost uncomfortable listening to him because you were thinking, oh my God, he's going to go off the rails. But it was still great. You always loved hearing what he had to say, and it was authentic. And I think that's one of the best things about Bookie.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a character, and he was a personality, and he was a larger than life personality, which was the whole point.
Yeah.
Or should be the whole point of much of radio. And I used to have, Dean Blundell used to come in and say, you got to get rid of that book. He stinks on the air. No, he doesn't. He's a great, passionate broadcaster who knows the name of the hot dog guy who runs the cart at the end of the street by the horseshoe.
Right.
He personifies the street and the music fan of the street in this city. We're keeping him. And
who the fuck does?
And when I know
who the fuck comes in and says somebody else should be fired?
Freddie, I got stories.
Seriously, no matter how you feel, like who does that?
Well, there you go. Anyway, when he was let go around from CFNY, from the Edge. And at that point, I had jumped ship and helped put Indy 88 on the air. And I lobbied them, hire Bookie. And they finally did. And that became his new spiritual home for until he died.
Sweet man.
There's nobody more passionate that I've ever come across in the business for music. With all due respect to everybody.
But what about sports?
Jesus.
Anything. Sports. Young and the
Restless, right.
Wilco hats and Converse shoes, and just he, as you said, Alan, he personified Toronto, and the horseshoe. Tuesday nights of the horseshoe for how many ever years he did that,
right.
And he knew the best diner.
He knew the best everything.
Any small town.
Anywhere you went, right? And the night they did a tribute for him at the Horseshoe, the bands that came out, the people that came out, it was one of the most eclectic, incredible evenings I've ever seen or been a part of. It was an absolute tribute to Dave. And if you go to the Horseshoe, right by the stairwell, there's the Bookman Senators jersey hanging over top, right?
Senators. Jesus.
Yeah.
Ottawa.
He wasn't perfect.
Why does all that stuff have to happen after you're dead?
Wow.
Did you see Curb Your Enthusiasm this year? One of the characters wanted to have his funeral before he died, so he could hear all the nice things said about him.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea because
it's a fabulous.
Maybe I'll do my the Phil's 365 and do tributes to people.
Well, that's what this is. Phil, what were you going to say about?
I just wanted. He was a lovely guy, and then at the end of my day, I'd always hang out with him just before he started live in Toronto. But there are a couple of nights he didn't record his, was it the Indie Hour at 11? Was that what it was called?
Yeah.
So what we did was we took it was a little briefcase with a remote transmitter in it. And what we do is go down to the Horseshoe and broadcast the band live, me and him. So we plug it into their phone lines and the amps. David would introduce the show. And then, of course, it's always the Rheostatics playing at the Horseshoe. But
right.
And then we go live to air. And it was just one, like, where else could you do that? And have the buy-in that you could go and do that. And you're right about the food. But not only did he know hot dog vendors in in Toronto. He knew them across North America. Just incredible.
What a
Can
loss for this
just
city.
before we go to your next guest, I just wanted to say that one of the incredible things about this team over 40 years, that we all exist on the same continuum. We all have something in common with, whether it's Jay or Ron Brichelle, in 1980. And we all still get I mean, if you go on the internet and try and find stuff, there is no station better documented than CFNY and The Edge. There is video, there's audio, there's your ongoing canon of CFNY, Toronto Mike. And it's flabbergasting, all these names and all these personalities at one place.
Yeah.
Just wait until the documentary comes out.
And then the book to follow afterwards, right,
Yeah.
Scott?
There you go.
Wow. Okay, Jay, are you still there?
Here I am, guys. Hey, how's it
Okay,
going?
so Jay, you've been listening. I know I promised 2 hours and I took 3 because that's how I
Poor
roll.
Jay. When do you go to sleep, Jay? Look at you go.
Right away, right after this.
Jay, I want to know what you've been thinking, how you feel having listened to the last few hours where we spoke about the legacy of CFNY and what that means to you when you turn on your microphone tomorrow morning and you're carrying the torch now in 2022.
One of the things working at The Edge in 2022 that, like I said this before, continuously blows me away is how many of our listeners still talk about something like all the shows, all you guys on here, and the fond memories, and the fact that we've built up so much goodwill over the years. It still keeps us afloat, it feels at times. During these rough times, it's been amazing, and I really hope that I've been in the last 2 years have been a lot of COVID, so we've been separated. We haven't been in the building. I've been in the building, but no one's in it. And talking to like our engineers there, like Mike Emmons, who has this amazing vault filled with amazing audio and clips of the past and some of the most incredible content. I just hope we get the opportunity when everything opens back up fully to kind of share that again, because I think the thing that The Edge has that no other station in probably Canada has is this history, not just behind the jocks, but the shows we've put on over the years and the shows we've been a part of, the legendary performances that have happened in a building and at Edge Fests and the interviews and just so much incredible stuff. And I hope we get an opportunity to, play a little bit of that again and bring that up, because I do feel like there's such an appetite for it, even being on the radio every single day there. I feel that vibe, and I'm very thankful that it's there.
Jay, is your whole time there doing the morning show at The Edge been during COVID, or were you there before COVID? Like what's the time frame?
We started February 24th, 2020.
Oh,
and
wow.
we were sent home pretty much March 13th.
And
wow. I've been in the building with people probably a couple weeks, and then we get sent back, and then we stay for 3 or 4 weeks together, and then I've only seen a full building for 2 weeks of my time there.
Well, isn't that changing soon for you guys? Or do you know?
Not yet. Yeah, probably.
That's more like the C team, never mind the B team, right?
Yeah, we have no. It's literally there's not a lot of team right now. So
I remember Jay, when you guys started, talking to you guys, and you were saying you were so looking forward to the opportunity because you had the ability to try to live up to the Humble and Freds of the day and to get a shot to at this heritage legendary place. I could see the enthusiasm and the excitement. This is going to be amazing.
But it's tough to build a morning show when you're not in the same room, man. Wow.
Yeah, it is hard. It's very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing pretty good. It's just it's difficult. It is difficult. And the initial pitch, I think when we first tried to get that job and really pitched our vision, it had a lot to do with kind of I compared The Edge to the Toronto Maple Leafs, the way they present the product these days. Okay, so like when you go to a Leaf game, right? The Leaf
Yeah.
game, the Leafs are still like you have a lot of young stars on the ice. It's about the young guys, but there's a lot of nods to the past, and there's a lot of you're in the intermissions, and they're talking about great moments in Leaf history, even though there hasn't really been any in fucking forever. But there's a lot of that look to the past, and I still believe that would work with the Edge today. I do believe that with the audience we're trying to attract, I don't think the younger demographic gets turned off by looking into the past as much as people think they do, because I think people in 2022 want to be a part of something. And I think that's the strong suit of the Edge, is that people have felt a part of the station for as long as any of us can remember.
The only problem with that Leaf analogy is in the end you lose, buddy. That's the problem.
Hey, you know what?
Jay.
Hey, Fred, you're not on for a few hours yet. Save that for the morning show.
Yeah.
Okay, Jay Brody.
Yeah.
Bless you for trying and bless you for giving a shit. I love the fact that you admire and respect those who came before you on this station that so many love so passionately.
Thank you. Yeah, this is why I got into radio, to be a part of the Edge and be a part of the morning show. If it wasn't for listening to the Edge growing up with my dad, and then I got into radio 8 years ago, and I made this decision. I was working on a construction site. I was listening to the Dean Blundell show at the time, thinking to myself, like, I've missed my opportunity. I'm just digging ditches, and I fucked my life up completely. And, there was I had one bad week where I lost my job, and I quit my job, and I lost my fiance. She left me. I just kind of reassessed my life, and I said, this is what I've always wanted. I'm going to go for it. And it's been that journey is what brought me to the morning show on the Edge. But we're hearing today, it's not great to make your whole personality or persona be one station, right? And be one thing. And seeing what you guys have done with your careers post the Edge has been also inspiring and eye-opening today.
Yeah. Well, on one hand, I'm jealous of you, because I just remember the days years ago, the vibrancy and the fun and the excitement of going into a morning show studio, especially at the Edge. I mean, it was different.
Yeah.
Our show ending, Maie walking, and all the fun times. On the other hand, man, I got to hand it, it's so fragmented now, and you're battling competition that we never dreamed of at the time. And
right.
You got a battle on your hands and a whole new world to deal with.
Yeah,
I'm doing it from my basement, which is difficult, but I do get to proudly say that I brought the Edge back to Brampton, because I'm recording.
Are you in Brampton? Are you in Brampton?
Great. Yeah, I'm recording a kilometer away from the original studios here.
Well, they're still there. Go back in.
I'm gonna go. I can bring my I'll bring the com.
Why not put that on the balcony?
I'll bring the Comrex there,
wow,
and we'll do a show there.
Wear a mask. It still smells like smoke, apparently.
So thank you, Jay. Thanks for staying up with us. I know it's late for you. That was amazing that you partook in this. Thank you, Jay Brody. And some others who had to drop off because we went very long. So thank you, Leslie Kross, for joining us. She had to leave. Bob Willette had to go. Thank you, Bob. Always great to hear from Bob Willette. Dani Elwell had to go, but it was great to have her join us. And of course, Humble Howard Glassman, who he'll be on Humble and Fred tomorrow morning. So thank you. And those is David Marsden still with us, or did he have to drop off?
I think he had technical problems. He went his room went dark, and then he was silenced.
It goes without saying, I didn't want to do this episode without David. I wanted all of you, but David to me was like, if he wasn't into this, I don't think I would have done it, to be quite honest. And when he was into it, I'm like, awesome. No disrespect to anyone. I know.
Ivor, you better check on David, though. right?
I'll reach out to him. Make
Like
sure
he's in his 80s now, right? And I like the room went dark. I hope he didn't fall
He
backwards.
doesn't
or
look
something.
good. He's like 84, I think.
Oh, I know.
He's
Yeah.
81.
80. Okay, so let's not age him too much. But he looks amazing.
Well, the fact he can still grow hair like that.
Yeah.
You sure that's not a wig? I gotta go pull that next time I see him. Okay.
Hey, one thing before we go, sweet Liz. Hi, darling. How are you?
Where is she?
I'm am I here? Yes. I'm doing pretty good. I wish I could say the same for my husband, my darling Peter. He's quite gravely ill.
Is he?
But
Hear
when we
this.
think back to our times together on this station, it's just incredible the imprint it leaves on you for your entire life.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
But Liz, I'm so sorry to hear that news, but I am glad that you were able to join us tonight, Liz. And at some point, Liz, because you're the only one on the Zoom right now who hasn't had their own episode of Toronto Mike. So at some point, we have to make that happen.
Oh, you do.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well,
And Mike,
I think I'm up for it.
Okay. Scott, what are you saying there?
Yeah, Mike, I was just going to say that was one of the first voices in the early days of CFNY. Liz's voice and the way she articulates and speaks absolutely captured me in early in my radio career. Just somebody that I wanted to be and emulate. She had it all.
Awesome. And
before I heard you, Maie, sorry, and Dani.
And they're all great. So let me thank Ivar. You're still here. Yes, I see you there. Ivar, thanks for doing this. And can you shout out once again NY the Spirit for David on his behalf?
Absolutely. nythespirit.com. It's where the spirit of radio lives today.
Is it still $5 a month?
It is.
Yeah, that's an amazing story that he's done that on subscription. Good for him. Yeah.
Ivar,
Andre's on there, and
you're on there.
I'd like to do on that
I'm on there.
station is play the music no radio will play today.
Right.
Liz is breaking up, but I'm going to get Liz's contact from you, Mike, because I want to catch up with her.
Oh, yeah. Happy to share that.
That'd be great.
Robbie J.
Yes.
Whose phone is that?
I don't know.
Is it David Marsden trying to call somebody? I just wonder whose
Go
phone.
ahead, caller. Go ahead, caller.
Caller, are you there? Okay. Robbie J, thanks for hanging in here and for joining me. I'm glad we could do something special for episode 1021. I appreciate it.
And I just, again, I wanted to give a shout out to all the incredible behind the scenes people who really made that station and continue to be relevant to audiences past, present, and hopefully future, right? Because it's I look back and I'm like, yeah, it's a pretty cool place to have done stuff with.
Absolutely. And Captain Phil. So tell brother Bill he was missed. We really
I will.
wanted
Can I
brother
just-
on this. Yeah.
I wanted to say just one last thing before you go, Mike. I think you've done an incredible job of capturing the whole canon of this radio station for 40 years worth. Your interviews now capture the whole history of this radio station and the people who work there. And the way you're able to get interviews back on track is something that even people on terrestrial radio need to learn from you. So
Thanks, Phil. Honestly, Phil, keep going. I have another hour for this. That was...
Well, you know what? To add to what Phil said here is that I think you, Mike, are very similar to the way we were. Not to take away from what we are today, but the earlier, when we were a little bit younger, that drive, that passion, is wonderful to see in you. And do the kind of thing, just getting people together. And you know what, there's the beauty of when you're a little bit younger, you just don't have any filters. You just call people up and say, hey, and people do. It's amazing. And you've done that. You've managed to bring people together. And you've, archived all this audio and some video, documented so many great stories that nobody else would have done or has not done. So that's really very important, not just for the CFNY story, but a lot of other radio stories that you've captured. Pretty amazing.
Well, thank you, Scott. And I can't wait for your next visit. So thank you for doing this. This was awesome having you here. And I can't wait till your next visit to the backyard because you're just one of the great guests.
In the summer, sure, summertime.
You can
Oh,
bike
you're
over.
you're one of the guys that's not allowed inside, right? Oh, okay.
I hit my head once, like everybody
Oh,
else.
okay. Look at Phil. I just want to hug Phil. Look at Phil. He's the type of guy you just want to hug the fucker. Look at him.
Totally.
Oh.
I've never had the pleasure of meeting Captain Phil. Maybe one day, but he's on the left coast there. But Freddie P.
Look at that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Freddie P, thanks for being a part of 1021 and for hanging in the whole 3 hours. I know you won't listen to a 3-hour episode, but you will.
Absolutely not. All maybe in 1 hour segments, but
Yeah.
Chunk it up.
No, Mike, I just echo what everyone else has said. Your passion and your interest and, your ability to do this, it's pretty good because nobody else seems to be doing it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think I only did 10 years and 1,000 episodes so I could have an episode 1021. Like this was the reason for all of it was for this right here, right now. And I've loved this. But Alan Kross, speaking of great FOTMs, thank you so much for being a part of this, buddy.
Well, you're very welcome. Again, nobody is documenting Canadian radio, and especially Toronto radio like you. Please keep doing it because if you don't, no one will, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great idea for this episode, Mike. Who came up with it?
Thank you, Robbie J, for the DM inspiration. Absolutely. And last but not least, the voice. Even just reading the phone book to me, Maie, brings me back to my university days. Listen, bumping into the Frosh week. You were there, and it was like, oh my God, there's Maie Pauts. Like my mind was blowing then, my mind's blowing now. Thank you so much for popping on the Zoom tonight, Maie Pauts.
Oh, my pleasure. It's always great to connect. And you know what? Like I said at the beginning, I was looking forward to this like a cocktail party with friends that I haven't seen in a long time.
Totally.
And we actually got some great history shared and some great stories out. Thank you so much, Mike, for allowing this to happen and putting this together. It was really a special experience. Thank you.
What a sweet woman. You and Liz.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just looking
You're
at both of you.
awesome,
The
Maie.
guys can piss off. I'm just looking at you. No, but seriously, I'm just thinking, Lauren as a little kid and
Oh,
your son Tad and, and our history. And my goodness, we were all young kids.
Yeah.
And now look, and here we
And
are
Mike-
still talking to each other. Fabulous.
Yeah. And our kids are older than we were when we started there at CFNY.
Yes.
True.
Yeah,
It started,
absolutely.
May. I started right when you went
Our
on
kids are
mat
the same
leave.
age as Pete and Gates were when our kids are the same age as Pete and Gates were when they came to the station.
Yeah,
Wow.
I guess.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike, a couple of quick things I was
I'm
thinking, Mike. You could
Trying
do,
just to add to that, our kids are the same age as Pete and Gates were when they first showed up. And I thought they were way too old.
That's funny.
That's funny. Yeah, you're right.
Scott with
Yeah.
1T, what say you there?
Oh, it's a quickie. I was going to say you could do an entire show just on the road show and the stories around that. That's a story in and of itself. It's a separate
Oh,
thing.
Scott, you don't want to see what I left on the cutting room floor. I realized
Oh.
very quickly you were going to break the record I set with episode 1000 if I did everything on that sheet. So
Well, I was going to say, you know what? This thing could have been like 6 hours if Brother Bill was on here. So probably good he wasn't on.
But I honestly I could do this all night. But thank you. I'm going to shut this down now. But this will drop episode whenever I don't know when 1021 will arrive, but whenever it arrives organically, I'll have this edited up and dropped. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And thanks again for making my night.
Our pleasure. We loved it.
That was
Thanks.
that was great.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Mike.
Thanks
Good
so
luck
much.
editing.
Hey, guys. See you
And
soon.
Fred, I'll
Bye.
see you tomorrow
Bye.
morning when I pop on your excellent podcast.
Oh, I forgot.
Okay.
Yeah, Mike's got to get up early too. Oh, poor Mike. See you guys.
Listen in,
See
Fred.
everybody.
We'll listen tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. As a good host, I'll be the last to leave. We'll see who sticks around. Who's last? Who's going to be here with me? Is Robbie J going to be here? Liz Janik?
No, honey, I gotta go.
Bye.
Bye.
Robbie J, last man standing. You win.
That's funny. Thank you. I don't know what I win, but whatever it is, it may be.
There you go.
Yeah, that's quite interesting.
Here, let me. You know, it's funny. My internet shit out like in the, I don't know, the first third of that, and I actually couldn't even like follow my own program like for a while because I was my internet. I don't know what happened, but anyway, it came back thankfully. But and I was, the funny thing is, here, let me actually stop recording before I share this little tidbit. Hold on. Bye.